Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Наші
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 791 of the news, and it's good to see you all once again. And Ukraine is already using their brand new ATACMS, and the Kerch Bridge is closed. And a big ol' yeah!
And a big ol' whoop! I don't know what the hell that was, but we are going to be covering the past 48 hours of the, well, actually 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. For some reason, my mind is thinking that's 48 hours because the amount of news that we have today of what has been going on inside of Ukraine is unbelievable. The Ukrainians have been able to claim a major victory in the Kherosn area. We've also heard that apparently the Russians are so scared of the ATACMS missile and what it can do that they've already preemptively shut down the Kerch Bridge until further notice. We've also heard that Russian oil refineries are getting hit. Right now, a Russian general is currently on trial for crimes against the state, which is pretty shocking. That very rarely ever happens. We've also heard that the United States has given Ukraine another $1 billion as of today. And not only that, we have gotten a shocking announcement about Ukraine's brand new super missile actually getting there a lot quicker than it has actually been publicly stated. And we're going to be going into all of this tonight throughout the course of the news, and of course the normal actions along the front lines that we've been seeing for years now, and what those are culminating into and what is being seen in each part of the front. Loads of news to be had, and also we have a little bit of news down in southern Lebanon about what's going on inside the Middle East at the moment. But before we get into all of that, I do have to make sure to remind everyone that the F-16s, the legendary F-16s that everyone has been banking a lot of hope and faith on, will be in Ukraine incredibly soon. From what we understand, the earliest they're going to be there is about 2 weeks away, so make sure to be waiting with bated breath over these next 2 weeks, because we may see the first F-16s in Ukraine skies by that point. So make sure to stick around for that, because that is going to be unbelievable when we see it. And not only that, they're going to be painted up in Ukrainian colors. So I cannot wait to see what that actually looks like in real life. But moving on
Man, it's been such a long time coming for the F-16s to finally get to Ukraine. We've been expecting it for so long. It's going to be unreal to actually see them in the skies of Ukraine, especially in the livery of their country. That's going to be incredible to see, and also a huge help.
Oh, it's going to be incredible. And not only that, 30 of them in between mid-May to middle of late of June. And then not only that, an additional 15 coming further down the line. Ukraine is going to have 45 F-16s. That is almost 60% of their current air power at the moment that they have in the entirety of Ukraine. They will be getting an entire bulk of that in F-16s. That is unbelievable, and not only that, it's going to be helping them out massively. But they don't even need the help, to be quite honest with everyone. Because today we got unbelievable news that the Ukrainian flag has been flown over Kozachi Laheri, and it is now clear that the Ukrainian armed forces have been able to take control of the town, and now we are seeing that Ukrainian forces may be in a much more advantageous position than they have been in the past. As many of you all know, the Battle of Crimean lasted for an incredibly long time, and from what we understand, there's a little bit of a gray area, and it seems as though Crimean may be contested at the moment in between Russian forces and Ukrainian forces at this very moment that we're talking right now, from the 36th Ukrainian Marine Brigade, which is still fighting in the area, being supported by other Ukrainian units across the river, including Magyar's Birds, which is now a part of the Ukrainian Marines as well. Meanwhile, down in Kozachi Laheri, we had not been getting a lot of updates or news of anything that had been happening down here beyond a Russian garrison was most likely based in this village. And not only that, we did hear the Ukrainian forces were apparently scooting their way down Crimean, further south into the east, and into the town of Kozachi Laheri, and possibly threatening the position. We did not know how seriously threatened Kozachi Laheri was by the Ukrainian forces until today, when we got news that the flag has now been raised over the water tower in the central area of Kozachi Laheri, showing that they have taken the town. Here is the video of the flag flying on the water tower, showing that Ukrainian forces are now in control of the town. And we can see the Ukrainian flag right up there on top of the water tower. Not really a lot of water in it, but I will tell you this, there's going to be a lot of Russian bot tears in that thing before long, seeing that flag flying over Kozachi Laheri, which is a larger settlement than Crimean, and not only that, it's in a slightly more advantageous position on the battlefield. But we'll be getting into that analysis in a minute. But there is the flag, Once again, proving that they are in the dead center of Kozachi Laheri and that they have largely taken the town, if not entirely captured it, and it appears that it also hasn't taken any serious damage either, possibly showing that Russian forces have withdrawn from the town and are now planning on regrouping further on near to the T-2206 highway just to the south. But beyond that, this town of Kozachi Laheri is in an incredibly advantageous position because it serves a well-defensible position is the best way I can explain it. Kozachi Laheri is on the very edge of the marsh, meaning that the Ukrainians still have the same kind of difficulty supplying and reinforcing their troops that would be inside of Kozachi Laheri, just like they did with Krenki, but Kozachi Laheri does not have forests that go all the way up to Krenki's edge, or the village's edge. They actually stop a fairly good ways away in most directions, meaning that there is only this one small area of forest right here that pretty much gets right up to the village of Kozachi Laheri. This is so important because this means that if the Ukrainian armed forces, if the Ukrainian Marines that are holding this town are able to move in enough anti-tank guided missile systems and enough ammunition to keep them running, they will certainly be able to stop the Russians from using their main and really only doctrinal strategy or doctrinal tactics during the war, which is a large armored column push onto the town to try and break the Ukrainian forces inside and force them into a retreat back through the Konka River into the Dnipro and then back to the other side of the river. This is a huge deal. Kozachi Laheri is an incredibly well-defended position, at least for the geography that it has. And not only that, it directly threatens the T-2206 highway, as the very edge of the village, or some of the village houses, are not that far away from that highway. They are only 1.2 miles away. Your typical anti-tank guided missile system has a range of about 2 to 2.2 miles, meaning that this highway, and let's make sure the length, about an entire whopping, as the crow flies, let's see here. About a mile of it, approximately, is completely wide open with no coverage whatsoever, meaning that Ukrainian ATGM forces or anti-tank forces could fire onto this road, destroying supply trucks, armored vehicles, and any other Russian supplies or equipment that would be attempting to move into position to try and attack Krenki. Meaning that now Russian forces will almost entirely be fighting from the area around Korsunka, Novolaheri, Pischane, and really the small village chain that goes down this highway right here. They may even try and create a perimeter down this village chain because a attack on Ukrainian positions beyond this point is possible for the Russians, but it would incur rather high casualties now due to the defensive positions that the Ukrainians hold, and not only that, the kind of losses that would be incurred trying to retake the village of Kozachi Laheri. It's actually incredible news. It is unbelievable news. And not only that, I believe, if I'm correct, that either the city of Kozachi Laheri is on a bit of a hill near to the river, meaning that it's looking down on most of the fields below it, or these fields are gradually sloping. Sadly, I haven't been able to get a topography map, but one thing that I have heard is that there's a sloping landscape near to the outskirts of Kozachi Laheri, and if it's actually sloping upwards and to being a higher altitude, the further on in you go south from Kozachi Laheri, that's an even better position for the Ukrainians, as this means that Russian tanks will have to crest the hill, most likely around this area, and start moving downwards towards Kozachi Laheri, meaning that they are in a clear line of fire the entire time that they're advancing. There is no cover at all during that entire advance. Once again, meaning that the position is going to be very hard to attack for the Russians, and that the Ukrainians have gotten themselves an absolute whopper of a victory today. There is a bit of an issue, however. We have seen during the Battle of Krenki that Russian artillery and glide bombs, considering that air defense inside of this area is very hard for the Ukrainians to use. We have seen that the Russians have used a large amount of artillery and glide bombs to pretty much decimate the towns, and not only that, to attempt to wipe out the Ukrainian forces inside, and we have seen that that's posed a large issue for Ukrainian forces. If the Ukrainians were able to dedicate enough anti-tank forces, anti-air forces in the form of man-pads such as the AIM-92 Stinger, and counter-battery artillery on the other side of the river to try and target and destroy Russian artillery that would be bombing Kozachi Laheri, they may actually be able to end up holding this town for an incredibly long time and using it as the proper base of operations that they would need to try and further expand, and not only that, continue to cut off the T-2206 highway and also expand a Ukrainian bridgehead into the forests around Krenki, and also make sure to keep control over these fields just to the west of Kozachi Laheri. it is an amazing position. I cannot say this enough, and it is great to hear that they were finally able to take this. This may be the point where we actually see the tipping in the scales, where the Ukrainians may be able to make marginal amounts of progress or advances in the region and try and move towards the Aleski Sands Nature Park, which is just to the south near this forest belt. But beyond that, we're now going to be moving on from that Kherosn area news of the major victory that the Ukrainians have been able to have there today, and we're going to be moving up into the general area where we got to see that the Ukrainian Air Force MiG-29s are active in the area and apparently shooting down Russian drones. Here's the clip. When you see the MiG-29 right there, it's rocketing through the sky just at subsonic speed, and we can see it fire the missile. There goes the missile. And there goes the MiG-29. And we can see that the missile impacted a drone right down there and ended up blowing it to smithereens.
Nice. What kind of drone was that? A Shahed or like a consumer one?
We really don't know because we didn't get to see the drone at all in the clip. Well, the only thing we saw was the plume of smoke of the remains of the drone. Sadly, we never got to see what actual drone it was. But we can confirm that that aircraft the Ukrainians were using is a standard MiG-29 that fired an R-73 the missile. Really a closer-in dogfighting missile is the best way to explain it. We see the hit right there. And look at that arc on that missile. That thing was actually pulling some fairly hard G's to get down there, but not that hard of G's, especially compared to something like an AIM-9X. The AIM-9X is going to curb stomp a R-73 every day of the week, and when the Ukrainians get the F-16s, the F-16s can actually mount and use AIM-9Xs and also AIM-120 AMRAAMs. Not only that, a whole bunch of other missiles that Ukraine has had access to throughout most of the war, but have never been able to effectively use because Russian equipment, or really Soviet equipment, is not cross-compatible with Western weaponry that you can mount onto an aircraft. But still, very nice to see the Ukrainian Air Force is defending the skies around the southern area of Ukraine. And not only that, we've been able to hear something very big. Many of y'all will know that $61 billion just got approved by the Congress and the Office of the President here in the United States to be sent to Ukraine. But we just heard that an additional $1 billion has now been lopped on for Ukraine, and there's going to be a couple of nice extra little goodies that will be sent in this little list. RIM-7 and AIM-9M missiles for air defense. This is very interesting because AIM-9Ms are actually a little bit old. Usually in America, we prefer to use the AIM-9X and the AIM-9L. And the AIM-9L even is a little bit behind the times compared to the X. The X is truly the next greatest and latest thing. They're also going to be providing Stinger anti-aircraft missiles to the Ukrainians. On top of that, they're going to be providing small arms and additional rounds of small arms ammunition, including 50 caliber rounds to counter unmanned aerial systems. So it sounds as though these 50 caliber rounds are most likely going to be used for Ukrainian air defense. The 50 calibers mounted onto the technicals. Additional ammunition for the HIMARS. 155mm artillery rounds, including high explosive and dual-purpose improved conventional munition rounds, 105mm artillery rounds used for the L115 or something along that line. We've also seen that 60mm mortar rounds are being provided as well, and we've also seen that more Bradleys are going to be provided in this billion-dollar package. That's an incredibly interesting one. More MRAPs, more Humvees, and we're trying to get rid of the Humvees. I think we're giving Humvees to anyone who's with us, like Afghanistan, Maddie. We're like, hey, you got a collapsing government, son? Here. Reaches in our pocket, pulls out like 1,000 Humvees. Here, take them. Because we're trying to get rid of all of them.
The Humvees at this point are like those Jolly Ranchers when you go to like a realtor or a lawyer's office or something like that. They just hand them out like candy.
Dude, we hate them. Like, we don't want them anymore. I know the Humvee looks really cool, but the thing is that in the modern day with IEDs, landmines, all that kind of stuff, the Humvee has turned into a death trap, and that's why we've almost pretty much moved completely away from the Humvee here in the States, and here in the United States, and we're now moving on into mine-resistant armored personnel carriers, armored cars, whatever you want to call them, because they're a lot safer for the infantry inside beyond a non-armored Humvee getting obliterated. But we also got to hear that they're going to be sending some logistics support vehicles. That could be of any kind, but it's really just going to be a cargo truck. Tactical vehicles to tow and haul equipment. Why in the world has it got to be tactical? It's just a vehicle. It's just a hauling truck or something like that with a hauling trailer, probably like a lowboy trailer. You know, you could put it that way. Anyways, tube-launched, optically tracked, wire-guided missiles. tow missiles, pretty much most likely for use with the Bradley and also for use with the anti-tank guided missile forces that use the man-deployable tow launchers. They're also going to be getting more Javelins and AT-4 anti-armor systems. They're also going to be getting precision aerial munitions of an unstated type, which is extremely hype because we don't know what they are, but they're most likely going to be used with the F-16, and they're getting there a little bit early. Not only that, we've also heard that they're going to be getting airfield support equipment. Once again,
yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's confirmed. F-16s, man. That's just what that's for, probably.
Oh, definitely. Like, notice, Matthew, how a lot of these things are only usable with the F-16 AIM-9Ms, precision aerial munitions, airfield support equipment. Those things are specifically in preparation for the arrival of the F-16s here in a few weeks or maybe a month or so. That is huge. That is a very big thing, and it's showing us that the F-16 is nigh. It's here. It's pretty much. It's going to be here within the next few weeks. We're also hearing that they're going to be providing some anti-armor mines, a lot like the TM-62s that we've seen in Ukraine a lot. They're going to be providing claymores, which are kind of cool. I'm sure they'll be attaching those to doorbells in the middle of the woods. Demolitions munitions for obstacle clearing, MICLICs. Night vision devices, you know, everyone knows what that is. Spare parts, field equipment, training munitions, maintenance, and other ancillary equipment. So overall, this little $1 billion, little $1 billion, because you'll have to remember, there's another $61 billion that's being given to Ukraine. This is just $1 billion of it, and we're not even getting the raw numbers in each category, but this is still looking very promising and incredibly good. I would assume, going off of this, the Ukrainians are going to be some fat cats here coming soon with military equipment from the United States, and they're going to be able to start doing a lot more than they have been able to do over the prior months as U.S. support dried up and the deliberations and the debates here in America were still ongoing. Now, America's back, and Ukraine's going to be back with them too. And a huge shout out to the Europeans who gave out a lifeline for Ukraine to be able to carry on through until American support came back around, because without that, amazing support by the European nations, it would have never been possible probably for America to circle back around and end up supporting Ukraine again. But not only that, with the announcement of this new $1 billion package, there was a very big announcement, and this was one that I felt like I was an idiot for saying. I felt like I was becoming a schizophrenic, but we actually found out that this was true. Because someone asked me a while ago, several days ago in the super chat, they said, Enforcer, when is Ukraine going to get their first ATACMS? And I said, and I sounded like I was blown away by the question, like they didn't know. I said, they already have them. They attacked the Dzhankoy airfield with ATACMS. And they did. The Ukrainians announced that. And then when everyone in the world said, oh, look, we're finally going to give Ukraine ATACMS for the first time ever, I went, wait a minute, am I wrong? I was like, do they not have ATACMS? Because I swore that those were ATACMS that they fired at Dzhankoy, because nothing else would have had the range. It wasn't Storm Shadows and Scalp EGs, and it was about 140 miles away from the nearest launching site, or from the Kherosn area, it was about 90 miles away, still out of range of your normal M39 and M40 HIMARS rounds. So I obviously assumed they would be ATACMS. The Ukrainians also showed videos of them launching what appeared to be ATACMS missiles, and so I went, well, they got to be ATACMS. And I answered the question, the super chat, as they already have them. And these aren't going to be the first ones that Ukraine gets. And then everyone said that they didn't have them and they were going to be getting them for the first time ever. Now, to unconfuse everyone, it actually turns out that we sent ATACMS months ago at some point, and we had already provided them to Ukraine. So it turns out that they're not getting a brand new super missile. They've had the super missile for a bit, and they're starting to use them now out of their reserves, because now they're knowing that they're going to be getting far more of them and that they can start lobbing these things at the Russians day and night. So incredibly good news. And I gotta say that it is absolutely impressive to know that they have already provided these things, and it's good to know that our reporting was on par, because it looks like no one else noticed that. And we noticed that on this channel, and then I felt like an idiot because I wasn't really sure whether what I noticed was me being a schizo or me being for real, and it turns out I was being for real and got the source correct. But nevertheless, a lot of people have been saying that Ukraine is already using long-range ATACMS in the war, and a lot of people have been saying their thoughts about that. Also, a quick typo addressing, though. ATACMS missiles are not used on Russian territory. They're only allowed to be used on Ukrainian-occupied territory. But a lot of people have had a lot of different inputs on that. And Matthew, what are people saying, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so the poll question that we asked the audience, we said that U.S. officials say Ukraine is already using the new long-range ATACMS missiles, and what are your thoughts? 57% said the U.S. already had them in Ukraine, 30% said the U.S. already had them ready to go, basically already sitting in Europe, and 9% said I really need more information first. And from what we can gather, it sounds like the U.S. had already sent a small batch of these new long-range ATACMS to Ukraine before this bill even passed. And it was probably authorized underneath that emergency bill that the president had access to, and that's how they got them to Ukraine ahead of time. But now we're getting more and more money flowing in from this bill, and they're going to actually send the remaining amount that are already in Europe, according to the reports we've seen, and go ahead and ship those across the border into Ukraine. So to me, this is a very good thing, but I'm with the 57%. The U.S. already had a small batch there in Ukraine, and that sounds like probably the most likely situation. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, in my opinion, they already had them in Ukraine. We have been reporting that for a while here on this channel, so I'd have to say, yeah, they've been in Ukraine for a bit. And also, the Ukrainians published a video days before the United States even said, for the first time ever, we're giving them ATACMS, showing that they had already fired ATACMS at Dezhenko airfield in northeastern Crimea. So going off of that,
Also, by the way, Enforcer, I think the difference is before Ukraine had the medium range ATACMS, and these new are the long range ATACMS. I'm not sure if they've had these long range ones before.
Maybe not. I haven't heard a clarification of the different kinds of ATACMS they've been getting. There are different variants, though, with different ranges. It's just that I've never heard them specify which ones they're getting, which ones are longer range or shorter range. But nevertheless, it is great to hear that they're getting some more. But the way the United States
also, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was about to say another thing as well. These new long-range ones. You know what's right on the edge of the firing distance of these new long-range missiles?
What's that?
The Kerch Bridge is literally right there on the outer ring of the distance on this new missiles. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah, it actually is. And what's really interesting about that is that we've apparently heard that the Kerch Bridge has now been shut down for a pretty good while. From what we know, it may be indefinitely, because they're scared that the bridge might get hit. Although that's a little weird to shut down the bridge indefinitely, though, from what I understand. But that's at least the word that I had heard going around today. We don't know if that's entirely true or not. We do know that the bridge is temporarily closed at the moment, but we don't know if it's going to be a permanent bridge closure. But nevertheless, still big news to hear, and once again showing us that the United States has been funneling some weapons to the Ukrainians and making sure that their war effort goes quite smoothly, and it has been going very smoothly. Up in the Smolensk area, we were able to see that near Yartsevo, the oil silos continued to burn, and the damage appears to have been fairly significant. Here is the oil silos that were targeted and hit right here. You can see them in the satellite pictures. There's actually two different locations, and here's the clip of one of them on Flya.
Стоит просто, по сути, стоит машина, газовая служба. Все, дорога не перекрыта, но, в принципе, что идти. Там дальше еще бочки, походу, стоят отдельно, крыша их горит. Здесь основная часть не выгорели.
We see the fire just toasting up quite nicely.
Называть-то цистерны.
Folks, is this what they call a Russian campfire? Because I think it is.
That's a Russian bonfire, блядь.
Man, it's just only time of the year we get warm. The 3 hours oil silo on fire. The rest of the year, cold. Freezing cold.
You could call it a Russian bonfire because their bonds are on fire.
Would you care for a bonbon?
That's the ruble, that's their military, that's their civilian population right there, just going up in flames.
Dude, that's Putin after he eats Prigozhin's special meal. That's it.
He made the best meals, the best airport meals. That's why he had to go down in that plane.
He made the little catering meals for airlines. He went down in the private jet. Coincidence? I think not, блядь. But beyond that, this fire was burning quite nicely, and once again showing that the Russians are losing a vital amount of oil. The kind of oil that they just couldn't lose. Unless, if it's through bribery and corruption. That's a way that you can always lose vital supplies in the Russian Federation, and you can always find these vital supplies making their way onto airsoft LARPing websites around the internet. Allow me, Russian military gear for sale. Alright, so, as you can see here, we have a wide variety, an incredibly wide variety, of military gear and equipment to pick from. You have Voensklad, store of Russian army gear. You have RussianColdCamo.com, that sells Ratnik camo. You have Kula Tactical. You have eBay, probably one of the best sources. And then you have Russo Militaire. You can get anything you want from Russia. But really quickly, let me make sure to go and click on the first site, Voensklad.com, because maybe they have some stuff that we could use here on this channel, or maybe some Russians could use in the field. Ah, yes. Your typical load of Ratnik military camo gear, the most modern modular set of equipment and armors that the Russian Federation can use. Helmets and body armor. What do they have here? Why, they have 6B47 helmets, 6B45 body armor, and once again, by the way, everyone, this is just totally for airsoft. They're not like scamming this or skimming this off of a Russian logistics officer or anything like that. They have the BNZ 6B47 Ratnik magazine pouch holder, once again for airsoft only, y'all. And then they also have the 6B23-1 body armor and ballistic goggles, just for some of the protection equipment that you can find. They also have Ratnik uniforms. I mean, they literally have anything and everything that you could ever want from the Russian army, all on this one website. I'm not sponsored by them, and there's a lot of websites like this, but you'd be very interested to know that that is not airsoft equipment. It's a running joke that it's always airsoft equipment, because that's what they put it in the importation form so that we can get into the United States. But the reality is that that is full-on Russian military gear made for the Russian armed forces that is being sold off via corruption, bribery, and all that, by Russian logistics officers, and sometimes that goes all the way up to the level of a general. And then it gets shipped to America for airsofters to use here, or paintballers, or whoever you may be. Maybe even just a cosplayer. I don't know. But beyond that, we have heard...
I would hate for my military equipment for the soldiers to be called a Ratnik of all things. It's like Vatnik, but it's Ratnik. It's like, that's not the same. It doesn't ring quite the same as calling your uniform a BDU or something like that. No, let's put on the Ratnik gear. That sounds really nice and high end.
Man, guess what, Gopnik? You are now Ratnik, please. And he's like,
oh yes, it's an upgrade from Rat.
He's like, it's an upgrade from Gop to Rat. Yeah. But anyways, a Russian general has been put on trial. To get into the serious business, a Russian general, Timur Ivanov, has been put on trial for receiving a bribe. We can see him right here. He looks greatly ashamed.
I wonder why he's in court, because usually they don't end up like this. They usually end up accidentally stumbling out of a 5-story window or something, but yet he's here in court.
It's a good question. I think it's because they're trying to make an example of them. Corruption in the Russian military is rife. It's one of the most corrupt armed forces in the world, and there's a litany of things I could list off to back that up. For example, a little while ago, back in the mid-2010s, there was a Russian officer who actually pointed out that one of the logistics officers at his base was stealing the rations that they had, the rations to feed the soldiers with, was selling them on the open market, and then in exchange he would take some of that money and he would buy cat food as replacement for the tushonka, which is kind of a beef. And this was a huge outrage in Russia, and so the Russian government said, you know what, this guy, he's a saint, he's a real whistleblower. 5 years in prison. They actually gave the guy 5 years in prison for whistleblowing on the Russian army and the kind of corruption that they have inside of it. This is an embarrassment to the Russian government. It doesn't look good, but nevertheless, it's something that is very strong and very prevalent in Russia, and it appears that this is one of the few guys who's actually being put on trial. The only reason he's being put on trial is mostly because he's not in with the inner circle of the Russian government in their corruption and bribery that they're conducting. So they decided to make an example of this guy, so that way other people who aren't in the inside circle are scared of conducting a little bit of a bribery or a scam or something along those lines, so that way they don't end up like this guy, going to prison or falling out of a window. But still showing corruption is fairly rife inside the Russian Federation. Moving on from that, we've also heard that the Poles are going to start helping to return able-bodied men back to Ukraine. This is something that we've known about for a little bit, and I'll explain really quickly what has happened. while corruption is incredibly high in the Russian Federation, there is a underlying amount of corruption inside of Ukraine. It is being combated by the central government. We have seen that the SBU has been detaining and arresting military officers who are involved in bribes, corruption, anything along those lines. We've also seen them doing that with the border guards as well. But let me explain a brief story here really quickly. So, back at the beginning of the war, when martial law was declared, under absolutely no circumstances was any Ukrainian man in between the ages of 18, I believe, to 45 allowed to leave the country. If you ever saw an able-bodied Ukrainian man outside of the country that had left the country during that time, because martial law is still in place, but they relaxed the rule a little bit and allowed some men to leave the country a little bit later on. But really, for the first 6 to 8 months, not a single man was allowed to leave the country. And even after that, it was very stringent who could leave. So a lot of the guys who ended up leaving the country would usually end up going up to a border guard, especially if they had a lot of money, and they would say, "Hey, I'm going to give you $10,000 in cash if you can just turn away as my family and me walk across the border. And by the way, could you stamp our passports to show that we've gotten approval to be able to leave the country for however long we need?" And the Ukrainian border guards would go, "You know what? Sure, I'll take that 10 grand. Here you go. You can cross the border and go on into Europe." And it was actually a fairly big issue. A lot of people were ending up doing this. And you know, it's something, you know, whether you agree with that or disagree with that, because some people are like, wars are terrible, you shouldn't have to fight in it. But if everyone did that, there wouldn't be a Ukraine left to fight for. But nevertheless, this is something that was happening a lot at the beginning of the war, and for that reason, there are actually a decent amount of Ukrainian able-bodied men, according to the current conscription laws, that are currently in different parts of Europe, particularly inside of Poland, Germany, the Czech Republic, and Switzerland in particular. And it appears that
Switzerland.
Yeah, Switzerland, for some reason, it's only, I'm not even kidding, it's really primarily Poland, Germany, the Czech Republic, and Switzerland where these folks go. For some reason, they avoid Austria, most likely because I believe it's not a part of NATO, and it's also, I don't think, that much of a part of the European Union either, although it kind of is. It's in one of the outlier groups, not a full-on member, and also, they avoid Hungary, and they also avoid Slovakia for reasons. But beyond that, it is something interesting, though, that the Ukrainians started to crack down on that massively, because it was an issue that no one really knew about until about a year into the war. The SBU started mass arrests against border guards officials who were on the western Ukrainian border and had been accepting hundreds of thousands of US dollars, in some cases millions of US dollars in bribes to allow able-bodied men to cross the border. Because of that, there are now a lot of able-bodied men that are Ukrainian, that are inside of Europe, that are not supposed to be inside of Europe. And a lot of these countries have been turning a blind eye because they generally have a very positive attitude to Ukrainian refugees. The Ukrainian government, however, doesn't have a positive attitude to able-bodied men leaving the country. And also, some people, go, "Oh, well, maybe they let them leave." From what we know, that's not the case. That was very rare that they would allow anyone to leave. It was almost like a 1 in 1,000 chance that they would allow a permit to leave the country during that time. So it was very rarely issued. So it would be a unicorn if you were one of those people. So
It's still in place, though, isn't it? Like, you can't just leave the country right now either if you're an able-bodied male. Is that right?
that is true. The mobilization laws and also martial law do not allow able-bodied men, I believe in between the ages of 18 to 45 still, to leave the country under any circumstances. So if you're younger than 45 or older than 18, leaving Ukraine is not on your itinerary. It'd be very, very rare to be able to leave Ukraine under any circumstances, either at the beginning of the war or even right now. But we have heard that a lot of them did, and Poland is now starting to say that they are going to be looking into helping out Ukraine on returning a lot of these able-bodied men back to Ukraine that are inside of Poland. So they're most likely, because this is how it's most likely going to work, there will most likely be a large amount of Ukrainian able-bodied men, because the men are in Poland for the reason they don't want to fight in the war. They're most likely going to end up moving to Germany, the Czech Republic, or Switzerland. Switzerland is most likely the safest bet, because Switzerland is a neutral country, and for that reason, they're most likely not going to send anyone back under any circumstances. Although, Although we have seen them getting very close to breaking their neutrality lately, so even there, they may end up sending them back. It may actually end up being a European Union resolution that these countries begin to try and find these Ukrainian able-bodied men, see if their papers check with the Ukrainian government to see if they do, and if they don't, they may end up being deported back to Ukraine, so that way the Ukrainian government may conscript them for service in the armed forces. While the war in Ukraine is going all right, and of course U.S. support is going to be making it go a lot better, it is still a war, and losses are incurred, and there always has to constantly be an endless mobilization of new manpower to be put into the armed forces, either to grow it or to sustain its size. And the fact that a lot of Ukrainian able-bodied men left the country and ended up going into 4 specific countries inside the European Union has ended up causing some issues. So we'll be seeing what happens as a result. I have a feeling that now that Poland is saying they're actively going to help to send these folks back to Ukraine, we're probably going to see a lot of Ukrainian men pack up and most likely move into Germany, the Czech Republic, or Switzerland, one or the other. But with that,
one idea that Ukraine could consider, because now that the people are scattered across Europe that sort of like either left or bribed their way out of Ukraine or something like that. They could consider maybe allowing some of those people to renounce their citizenship and maybe avoid going back to Ukraine for the conscription. Because at the same time, I understand why some people fled to not fight in the war. I understand it. To me, it's a little bit cowardly, but I understand why some of them left. But at the same time, though, if a Ukrainian citizen wants to hold on to their citizenship, then they're gonna wait for the war to end. The country's gonna be in peace, and then they're gonna return to Ukraine and enjoy the fruits of the labor of everyone who basically sacrificed their life to keep it free. And obviously, that's not fair. So, to me, it seems like maybe allow the people an option to renounce or go back to Ukraine and fight. That seems like it could be fair. But I'm actually gonna put a poll up on that in a minute and see what the audience thinks about it as well. But what's your thoughts, Enforcer?
I would have to say it's I don't generally view that all too well. I see a lot of people saying some people aren't made to fight. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to disagree. Some folks are not made to fight. You never know who those people are until they go to the front. That's the thing. For someone to say, I'm not made for the front, that's generally, on the general level, that is cowardice, because you're running from your own country to flee to another one, so that way all of your countrymen can fight and die in that war, in maybe the tens of thousands, maybe even the hundreds of thousands by the time this thing is all over, so that way when the war ends, you can come back with your Hawaiian shirt on and your suitcases back to the Ukrainian border and go, I'd like to be back in. It seems like things are good now, so I'm going to hop back on the gravy train. That's just not the way it works. It's, at least to me, if your country is in a middle of a dire situation where the existence of the country is at threat, it is your obligation, especially as a man, because we're the ones required by law to serve, to sit there and either volunteer or to wait for the armed forces to call on you. It doesn't matter whether you think you're ready for war or not. War didn't wait for you. You're having to wait on the war. So if the nation calls, you have to go. And on top of that, a lot of people also don't know that only around 10 to 15% of Ukrainian armed forces are involved in frontline combat operations. The 80 to 90% that is outside of that limit are involved in logistics and a whole bunch of stuff in the rear lines that has absolutely nothing to do with being in direct danger and death on a daily basis. And hell, who's to say that the Ukrainian armed forces couldn't use a lot of logisticians, truck drivers, repairmen, and the like that can end up helping out the Ukrainian forces massively in the rear lines, which is something that Oleksandr Syrskyi is certainly starting to prioritize these days. That's a lot like, because I'll also say this, in World War II, there were, I believe, by the end of the war, 8 million service members in the U.S. Army alone, I believe, if I remember correctly. And out of all of those, only 10% of them, so 1 out of every 10, was in the infantry or in a combat position. The other 90% were all doing jobs to help keep the combat infantrymen, or really just the combat troops, going. That's how all armies work around the world. So to say, I'm not made for the war, it's like, it's not like you're going to have to be getting shelled every day. 90% chance you'll end up in a position where you don't get shot at all. You just end up running a truck or driving into the front lines and dropping off munitions there, or doing something else, rigging parachutes, cooking food. I mean, there's a million jobs that the armed forces require in each country, and out of all of them, only 10% of them fall in the combat category. So I would say, go ahead.
The only reason I propose the idea of allowing some people to renounce their citizenship is not because I necessarily think that people shouldn't go back and fight for their homeland. To me, the right thing to do would be to go back and fight for your country, because I'm not really sure why anyone would want to run off and abandon their people like that, because I couldn't imagine doing that if the United States was under attack. Let me just run off to Canada or something like that and run away from where I've grown up and just leave everybody. That would be almost unthinkable to me. So, I understand war causes fear in a lot of people, and it should, because war is a bad thing. But at the same time, it's like, when are you going to put your foot down and, be a man or be a woman and fight for your country? It seems like the wise thing to do. But the reason why I said give them a chance to renounce is because if you send back people and round them up from all across Europe, these people that really don't want to fight, even helping out with the military in a logistical capacity, you might bring these people back and find that they're so unmotivated to help out that they end up being a drag on the armed forces instead of being an actual help, because they're just basically resisting and they don't want to be there. That's another possibility as well. You could find yourself with a very unmotivated group of people, kind of like what the Russians are experiencing right now by trying to put prisoners in the war as well. They have unmotivated troops which simply have no morale.
I would say that's a bit of an issue, but usually if you run into those issues, that's insubordination, and then punishments are handed down to folks like that.
That'd be a lot of punishment.
A lot of punishment, yeah, but like even for the United States in World War II, there was a lot of punishment handed down. I think the U.S. Army in just the European theater from 1944 to 1945 ended up hanging something like 900 soldiers for crimes. I mean, it was. When you think about it, it's I think it was 963 exactly from just 1944 to 1945. That was a lot of death penalties handed down from military tribunals onto the rank and file, because they either weren't doing things correctly or they were doing things that were heinous. And when I say that, I mean, something that rhymes with the fruit grape. Because that actually happened a little bit, and usually the U.S. Army was very severe in the punishments they handed down for that particular crime. Usually that always ended in a sentence of death. But beyond that, if you were caught, some people weren't caught, but if you were caught, it was usually a death sentence. But beyond that, it's just generally a thing to me, and I always feel like I have to revisit this every once in a while. When we hear that the Ukrainian government is going, hey, can we get our guys back? And the Polish are going, yeah, sure. You kind of had to see there's something that was questionable that happened, and not only that, the fact that you would it's crazy to me, because they broke the law. Technically, they've conducted a crime against the state at a bare minimum, a felony most likely in Ukraine, to really desert the nation and try and flee, and then bribe border guards, making them commit crimes in turn for them to leave. I'm not a big fan of that, and I'll say this, because a lot of people are always going to say, well, you've never been in that position in force, or what if you were drafted, or what if you were conscripted? I would be scared as hell. I'm not going to lie. I would actually be terrified. But it's my country. If they call on me, I don't really have a choice. It's not that I wanted to be in that position. I don't get to choose. The country didn't get to choose if it was war or not. It's an emergency of the state. The nation that you're living in is in peril. So you would have to suck it up. I mean, no matter how scared you are, you would just have to suck it up and deal with the fact you might end up dying. It's a very light chance actually. You might end up dying. Or you might end up having to serve for duration. It's just how it works. It's the country you're in. You owe a little bit to the nation that you're from. I saw someone say a little bit earlier, you don't owe anything to the country you're from. If everyone had that philosophy, a country wouldn't exist. There wouldn't be a Western world to fight for, because no one owes anything to anyone. You always owe something to the nation you live in. Otherwise, it will never exist in the first place. But I will be entirely honest, because a lot of people always act like we're removed from the emotional side of things. I would be scared. I mean, if I got conscripted, I would be scared. But I still would not flee the country, because that is a form of treason, or that is really a form of desertion in a way before you even join the armed forces. But that doesn't mean just because you're scared, you get to pack up and run away. Not everything's going to be a rose walk or a cakewalk in life. War certainly isn't, but that doesn't mean you get up and run away from it and go enjoy the good times, while everyone else in the country who thought like me has to go to the front lines and possibly fight and die, so that way you can come back and enjoy the good times again. That's just not how it works. You're in for a penny, in for a pound if you live in any country around the world, whether you like it or not. Like, a lot of people are saying, what about the Iranians? What about the North Koreans? I mean, in reality, they owe a little bit to their country. I mean, they live there, they were born there, they're a part of the Iranian team. It doesn't really matter whether they like what the Iranian government does or not. It's still their country. If they called on them to serve, they would have to serve. That's just how it works in every country around the world. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And also, another thing that people have been talking about is that the Russians have closed the Crimean bridge right after Ukraine got the ATACMS, and a lot of people are wondering if the Russians are scared that the Ukrainians are about to obliterate the bridge. Some people are thinking that they will, some people are thinking that they won't. But Matthew, what do you think about it?
All right, so we asked everyone the question, what are your thoughts about reports saying that Russia has closed the Crimean bridge after Ukraine has received these new missiles? 54% said Ukraine will prioritize the bridge attack. 22% said let's wait and see, and 18% said Ukraine will hold off on the bridge. And considering that the Crimean Bridge has been a target for Ukraine for a very long time, and at this point it's become more of a political target than actually a military target, because it seems like the Russians have found themselves a new way to get aid into Crimea without having to use the Crimean Bridge full time. So they're still using it, but not nearly to the extent they were using it before to get supplies across the bridge. It sounds like to me Ukraine will probably go ahead and hit it. It probably won't be, a huge or a humongous attack, but it will be an attack nonetheless, so that way Ukraine can say that they hit it, which will obviously put them back in the news again, and it does good for their PR effort. I'm with the 55%. I think it will happen. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm largely of the idea it probably will happen as well. The Ukrainians consider the Crimean Bridge to be not only a major strategic target, but it's a symbol of a Russian attempt to try and create a legitimate claim to Crimea by connecting it directly to the Russian mainland instead of through Ukraine. So going off of that, I would have to say they will certainly target it, whether it's closed or not, and cause probably a decent amount of damage to it that will close it for a while, just so that way they can. Just for the fact that they were able to hit it and knock it out. It will be a huge morale booster in Ukraine. It'll, of course, like Matthew said, be a big news boon around the world, as people will be reporting on the bridge getting hit again. It'll put Ukraine back in the spotlight and make sure to keep people focused and paying attention to the war, at least a little bit in the periphery. And so, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion of what would happen. But before we move on from that and on into our next bits of news, particularly in Western Ukraine, because we got some really cool pictures of these nice, gorgeous armored cars, we've also been hearing that there's some questions in the chat. Matthew, what do we got for those questions?
And we got some very juicy questions. Juicy, I'm telling you. And the first one goes to Tony Snedcore, who's a longtime channel legend who throws in a very generous $100 donation. And thank you very much, Tony, for that support. That is very generous of you. And thank you once again for supporting our work. And Tony says, I wish this was more because you both earn it. And a total respect for all the work you do and crap you put up with. And appreciate you both. And LSA forever. And we appreciate you, Tony. Thank you very much for those kind words.
And thank you so much, Tony, for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running. It says it's your first Super Chat ever. For some reason, Matthew, I feel like it isn't. I swear that Tony has thrown in Super Chats before. I
think so, definitely.
Yeah, so I don't know what YouTube's saying about it being the first one, because you've certainly supported the channel a great deal. But nevertheless, thank you so much for the kind words. And I gotta say, Tony, that no matter what, whether people want to support us with $500, which is the max Super Chat can be, or whether it just be $1, we are worth however much y'all believe we are, and sometimes that is just being able to get to watch and hit the like button, which is a great help in its own. And I gotta say thank you for the massive support, because while you say that you wish it was more, that is more than we could ever ask for, and I gotta thank you massively for that incredible support and wanting to help this channel to keep on rolling. And thank you for really respecting and enjoying the work we do, because we put a lot of effort into this day in and day out. I also want to apologize really quickly, because a lot of people really do enjoy our short war videos, and we haven't been able to put one out today or yesterday. And to be quite honest, the news is a little slow right now, at least on a 12-hour cycle, because the way our news runs, the streams come out every 24 hours. And then if we do a short war video in the meantime, we're really just covering the past 12 hours of the news of the war in that video. And sometimes during that 12-hour span, not a lot happened, so we're not able to report on much. And the past 2 days have been like that, and we would rather have no video than bad videos. And so that's why we haven't been able to make videos. It's not because we're, taking a break or anything. It's really because we want to make sure that the quality's there when we put out a video, and it's actually news worth watching, not just news, to put out there to get another video out. And so I thank you so much for enjoying our kind of effort and dedication to this, Tony, because we try and make sure that everything we do is the highest quality it can be. And also, thank you for appreciating all the crap we put up with. There are people out there every single day who either are going at this channel, trying to tear it down, or something in the meantime. At this point, they all become a small choir. And we just keep on going. The Lee Spring Army continues to grow day by day, stronger and stronger. And the Lee Spring Army will truly never die. I don't believe it ever will, because the fact that the channel has grown 60,000 subscribers since we dropped out of law school, literally since we have dropped out of law school, has grown 60,000 subscribers over really just 2 months. That is truly incredible, unbelievable, as a matter of fact. And I don't think that this channel and its community will ever die. We'll continue to grow, and hopefully one day we'll become the premier news organization, not just on YouTube, but also around the world as well, really for everyone who wants to hear the news. And so, with that, thank you so much once again for the massive support and those incredibly kind words, and I thank you for appreciating both of us, because Enforcer Matt has also been an incredible part of that as well, and has certainly helped out in the behind-the-scenes things on the stream, because while I'm usually the front guy who's really running the show where everyone gets to see it, Matthew is doing a massive amount of work behind the scenes every single night to make a lot of the things that happen a reality, especially the live chat and everything else involved with that, which is a huge effort. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Sinful J, another channel legend who throws in a $50 donation this time, and thank you very much, Sinful, for your support as well. He says, long live the LSA, and take one from the live chat, please.
Hey, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, thank you so much for enjoying the channel. That support is huge. It helps us to keep this thing rolling, and if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to be here every single night. So thank you greatly once again, and we will make sure to take that live chat. And so, Matthew, what do we got for a live chat?
And the live chat question, sponsored by Sinful J, goes to Geek Hippie, who says, is it true that ATACMS are being phased out so we can send Ukraine more of them?
The ATACMS aren't being phased out so we can send more of them to Ukraine. They're actually being phased out because we're getting a PRSM, which is a precision strike missile that has nearly 80% of the 80% increased range over the ATACMS. Same yield, I believe, but just more range. So it's better, and we want to get rid of the ATACMS so that we can replace them all with PRSMs. And for that reason, they're getting retired, which was very good for Ukraine because it coincidentally lined up exactly with the same time that they were fighting this war. So as America is getting ATACMS out of service, the Ukrainians want them to be put into service inside of Ukraine. So it's a perfect match because we would really just get rid of the ATACMS anyways. We would end up destroying them. Or something along those lines, or using them for testing reasons. And so, for that reason, it's great. I mean, it's a perfect lineup. We were retiring them anyways. The Ukrainians need them, and we give them to them instead. So it's a perfect cycle. We aren't retiring them early because Ukraine's in a war. We aren't retiring them late because, you know, we wanted to hold on to them and make sure the Ukraine didn't get them. It was literally a perfect coincidence that we were retiring those and getting a brand new missile while they were in the middle of this war. And so, with that, I hope that does answer that live chat fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Sinful J, for the massive support and sponsoring that live chat as well, and helping this channel to be possible and helping us to keep it running. And with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be getting back into the Ukraine war news.
All right, and this one goes to K-Dub Janky, yet another longtime channel legend who puts in a $50 donation and says, what is your favorite historical inflection point? And mine is when Columbus and Vasco da Gama sailed in the 1490s to the Americas and Asia respectively, cutting off the Silk Roads and creating European dominance.
I would have to say, K-Dub Janky, historical inflection point. That's a really cool way to put it, actually. I like that. I would say that my favorite would be the Treaty of Versailles of 1918. I think that that is probably one of the biggest and most important inflection points in the modern day. There are so many. You could, K-Dub Janky, you could actually ask me about that per era. and I could probably get you an answer per era, because there are so many different inflection points where it was truly a watershed moment where it seriously changed things. The discovery of the Americas was a huge change in the way that Europe had been operating up until that point. And really, if it wasn't for the need for spice and the fact that the Europeans were willing to try and travel all the way around the world westwards to reach the spice lands, which are that of India and really Southeast Asia, Europe would have never been the world it was. It would have never evolved the way it did, and not only that, it wouldn't have become as powerful as it had in the future and had such a preeminence and dominance on the world today. So that is certainly a massive watershed moment, was when the Europeans traveled west and ended up discovering the Americas. A huge watershed, though, in the modern world is the Treaty of Versailles, because the Treaty of Versailles laid out the foundation for everything that's happened over the past 100 years, because of how poorly it was written. If it wasn't for the Treaty of Versailles, World War II would have never happened. If it wasn't for the Treaty of Versailles, the Great Depression probably would have never happened either, which was a huge changing moment in a lot of countries. If it wasn't really for World War I as a whole, a lot of modern culture, a lot of the way the world exists today would have never happened, because the change would have never come. That World War I and the Treaty of Versailles are probably the most important historical inflection points of the modern era. I would say it's actually more important than the collapse of the Soviet Union, because, like I was saying, the Treaty of Versailles affected so much. Really, it affected Germany enough that Germany would go on to once again re-enter another world war, creating World War II. And if it was not for World War II, then, of course, just like World War I, the world wouldn't have formed the way it had. The collapse of the Soviet Union probably would have come even a little bit earlier in time. We probably wouldn't have seen massive technological advancements that were brought about by World War II and the need to innovate quickly by every side involved in the war. There was just so much stuff that happened because of the Treaty of Versailles. And if it was not for that treaty, the world today would not exist the way it does. And a lot of people think that it's a flawed world, but to be quite honest, it's a lot better than the world that could have happened as a fault of not having the Treaty of Versailles, not having World War I and World War II, because someone said, wait, but World War II was bad. I don't know how, because, I mean, yes, a lot of people died, but there was so much that came out of it that has created the world we have today. If it wasn't for World War II, the Western world would not exist as strong as it does today, because the British Empire was already in a steady decline because of World War I. And then also before World War I, honestly, the British Empire was also once again starting to go into a little bit of a backslide, a small one. And if they had started to slowly fade away, and World War I didn't happen, the Bolsheviks would have never gotten in charge in Russia. There would have never been any major change to anything inside of Europe. Hell, Austria-Hungary may even have a chance of existing in the modern day. I mean, there is so much that would have changed. Hell, even, like, the Middle East would be completely different, because the Ottoman Empire would have probably collapsed slowly, and there would have never been the existence of Ataturk inside of Turkey, or at least the rise of Ataturk, to lead to the dissolution of the Ottoman Caliphate, and the Islamic question that existed for the next few decades until we got up into the present day, where we have Islamic extremism, and we're now seeing that that's been causing major issues throughout the Middle East. There would have been none of that. I mean, it would have been a completely different world that we would have lived in. And who's to say how in the world that would have turned out? There's a million different ways it could have gone, but it would have most likely gone in not necessarily a great way, to be quite honest, in the long run. It probably would have ended up being a lot worse. So I would have to say that would be my biggest historical inflection point, especially for the modern era, to try and keep it a little bit related to what we're talking about on the channel right now. But still, thank you so much once again, KW Janky, for that unbelievable support. It helps us out greatly. It helps this channel to be possible and keep it rolling. And thank you so much once again for throwing in a very interesting factoid about what you find to be a favorite historical inflection point. And I hope I was able to share mine and give a good reason as to why. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And thank you so much once again for support. And with that, it is time for us to move on back into Ukraine and to start covering all the news here, as we got to see some Ukrainian armored cars on exercise. And goodness gracious, do they look good.
Oh my goodness, those look nice, man. Those such a wide vehicle too. Like, that's a very wide wheelbase on that.
I think these
Juicy.
I think these things actually went in service, I think, in like the late 80s in the Soviet Union, but they painted them black because they used to be green. But I like them. They look really cool. Also, nice AR. I like to see it. Also, and then in the last one, we got to see the armored car again. Really cool. This is the Ukrainian National Guard. Give them a massive shout out. They got some cool tech.
Oh, wait.
Oh, what?
Oh, no.
What?
Go back to it real quick. Was that AR? Was that an AR-10?
No, AR-15.
It looks pretty thick, like maybe an AR-10, but maybe not.
Nah, that magazine's too narrow. That's certainly 5.56. Also, an AR-10 308. Man, that would be a battle rifle. That wouldn't even be a modern. That wouldn't really fall under the modern assault rifle concept that a lot of people love. Well, a lot of militaries love doctrinally. It would be a battle rifle, which would be yesteryear's doctrine of having a larger caliber and more firepower. More stopping power in each shot. Which honestly I'm more of a fan of. But modern military's not a big fan. But moving on from that and into our next bit of news, we also got to see that Ukraine secretly did have those ATACMS missiles. We actually covered that a little while ago, so we're going to be moving over that and on into the location unknowns, because we got to see that the Azov Brigade was in training. Check out these sick pics. Look at that. This guy's firing his M4 most likely. We can see these guys conducting some rifle training at a range. We can then see these guys walking away from their targets, most likely checking out their accuracy. And then in the last picture, I didn't know we could zoom in like that. We can see them right here posing for the picture, just looking cool as hell. You gotta say, big respect to that. They look cool. But moving on from that and on into our next bit of news, we also got to hear that the cases of desertion in the Russian army are starting to rise. According to information the British Ministry of Defense has been able to get, in March of 2024 alone, Russian military courts sentenced a record high of 684 members of the Russian armed forces for desertion. That means that those are the ones they caught. There are probably a lot more than they have not caught that are wandering around in occupied Ukraine or have actually made their way back into Russia and are in hiding. The total number of cases since partial mobilization in September of 2022 is 7,400, with the Moscow area receiving the highest number of cases at 496 over the entirety of the war. When you look at that number of 684 in a month compared to 7,400 over the entirety of the war from September of 2022, you can actually see that almost 10% of all of the desertions from September of 2022 up until now, which is about a year and a half later, is 10% in just 1 month. 10% of all the desertions happened just this last month. That is very big, and it's showing again that the Russian morale is dropping through the floor, that desertion is starting to become a larger issue in the ranks. Many of the soldiers who have been tracked down and appear in military court are given suspended sentences, returned to their units into the front lines, also showing that they may have a manpower issue. At the same time, asylum requests in Western nations from Russian nationals avoiding military service has reached record levels. Russian soldiers, including those forcibly recruited during the September 2022 partial mobilization, are required to remain in military service indefinitely with little prospect of release, pretty much meaning they are conscripted for duration, which is fairly normal in a large war like this, but still showing that desertions are starting to rise massively. Moving on from that,
I have a feeling that those desertion numbers are probably pretty low, like the actual recorded number of desertions. It's probably much higher than that, and even though they claim to be independent and stuff like that, it's still a media outlet that's, what was it, in Russia? It was actually a Russian media outlet.
I believe this was reported by the Ministry of Defense. Well, actually, it's Mediazona. Yeah, it's the independent Russian media group Mediazona.
Yeah. I'm placing my bets. That number is probably much higher than what's even being said right here, because there's no way it's that small. Like, that's way too small of a number.
I would have to say it really is small, especially when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of mobilized. There's probably thousands of them that have ended up deserting, and that's fairly high. That's a very big attrition on the armed forces, just out of really just people not having the willpower to be in the armed forces. So that's pretty serious, pretty freaking serious. But moving on from that into our next clip, we also got to see continued training of Ukrainian forces on how to clear trenches. Check this out. Look at them. They just naded their own guys. Look at that, fragged them. But we can see them right here, making sure to keep an eye on them, make sure they're conducting the trench clearing tactics properly. And as once again, trench clearing is a very important part in this war. We see explosions going off all around them as they're...
They blew up that firecracker right behind that guy's head just then.
We see them here still conducting their training, more or less. The pops and the cracks, of course, throw them off, but that's the point.
They might get a little tinnitus if they even get out there in the real situation.
Dude, they're gonna get out there and be like, Russians there. They're gonna be like, what? What? I can't hear you over the sound of the ears ringing, Blid. But with that,
What, Jack? Whoa, pause.
what do you mean, Jack? But moving on from that, we also got to see the Russian Kersey report over the past 24 hours as well.
Oh my goodness,
oh!
it's juicy. 8 Bobcats today. We're actually getting pretty close to getting up to 2,000 almost. It's getting pretty high on those Bobcat losses.
8 Bobcat skid steers obliterated. You gotta say, that's a pretty good number, Matthew. In 1944, my goodness, it's Normandy all over again, Matthew. The Soviets are driving the hammer through Europe back to Germany. I mean, goodness, it's a great year in history. I mean, it's a great one. Nazi Germany was being defeated on all fronts in Italy, France, and also on the Eastern Front at the same time. In 1944. Just a cool fact. Meanwhile, in the year 461,940, we don't even know what's happening by that point. There's another 880 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed today, meaning that another 880 have been knocked out of the war effort. 12 armored personnel carriers have been knocked out, along with 47 supply trucks, 1 main battle tank, which is kind of funny. It was just the one today. 43 artillery pieces, 32 drones, 2 MLRSs, and 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems. Overall, by and by, this wasn't a bad day. It looks like it was pretty damn good, and it looks like the Ukrainians are continuing to inflict incredibly high losses onto the Russian forces. Moving on from that and on out of the location unknowns, it's time for us to get on into that frontline news, as we've been getting a lot of info on those front lines. But nevertheless, it kind of returns us to a question we had a little while ago about Ukrainians who decide that they don't want to fight near the front lines, or they don't want to serve in the armed forces at all for Ukraine, and what should be done about that, if anything. And a lot of people have been saying that maybe these folks ought to be deported back to Ukraine to fight, or maybe they should be given the option to renounce their citizenship and never return, pretty much being banished from Ukraine if they left and really deserted the nation in its time of need. Some people are saying that they are completely against the idea of forced fighting, and some other folks don't really know where they lie on this matter, but a lot of people have had many different things to say about it. It is a largely controversial topic, not really on a political level, more on a morality level, about what one owes to one's nation that they've lived in, been raised in, and have been provided for in that nation. What do they provide it back? Do they provide anything, or do they provide it nothing? And Matthew, what are people saying about that?
All right, and on this one, we asked the question. We said, should Ukraine allow Ukrainian males that fled from the war to renounce their citizenship and not return to Ukraine? 44% said yes, give them that option. 26% said no, deport them to Ukraine to fight. And 12% said, I am 100% against forced fighting. And to me, I would say I'm with the 44%. I believe that they should be given the option to renounce their citizenship. Like the enforcer said, that's basically a banishment from Ukraine. And that's only fair because these Ukrainians that fled cannot be allowed to return to Ukraine after the war is over and now it's peacetime and enjoy the fruits of the war that they didn't fight in. That would not be fair to the people that actually stayed and fought heroically in the war. That would be an unjust situation. So I think they should be allowed to renounce their citizenship and not return if they don't want to fight, because if they return, and like I said earlier, and they're demotivated and they're basically a drag on Ukraine's armed forces, that's going to be a bad situation as well. And then the Ukrainians are going to be basically forced with constantly dealing with discipline issues amongst their ranks that they didn't have to deal with previously. So I'm with the 44%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my opinion, I would believe that it would probably be best to deport them back to Ukraine and get them into the armed forces. I'm not into the idea of allowing them to leave because that's a loss of manpower that is desperately needed. Because in a war, you can't really lose any available manpower there is at all. You just can't afford that kind of a sacrifice. The fact that these folks left, and considering that they are citizens of Ukraine, like, for example, citizens of America, I would consider that to be draft dodging. It's actually a felony in the United States to draft dodge as well. And either they need to be tried for their crime or they need to be conscripted anyways and pushed into military service. Some people are going to say, well, they wouldn't really want to fight at that point, would they? They would kind of be a drag on everyone else. That's fine. You can take those people and you can put them into rear line positions. They can push papers around the offices, maybe type up reports. Hell, they could drive a truck or repair one for that matter. But if they don't want to do that, then there are ways. There are ways to make them want to do that. For example, prison sentences. or corporal punishment, or anything along those lines. Because at this point, it's a war, and no one in Ukraine has the time to really coddle folks who are cowards and say, "Oh, it's okay. Y'all can leave. Y'all can come back and enjoy all the fruits of the labor of the tens of thousands of people who sacrificed and died for you to come back and enjoy life, not even caring at all that you were a coward." It doesn't seem right because let me put it this way, because I see a lot of people who are saying in the chat, well, what do they don't want to fight? They don't owe their country anything. Well, if no one owes their country anything, then it ceases to exist. Because when people say that, if everyone had that mindset, the United States wouldn't exist, because no one would owe anything to the country at all. No one would serve in the military. No one would try and become a police officer. No one would try and become a firefighter. Public services would just cease to exist. The things that actually maintained the country would disappear overnight, and the country would literally fall apart. So you can't have everyone of that mindset, and you can't allow that mindset to exist, because if it spreads, the country will collapse from the inside out. You can't have that kind of that kind of a deal. That's just not how it works. And on top of that, I don't like the idea of people openly knowing that they're going to freeload on other people who have a mindset like this one, where they go, it's okay, there are many people who are patriots, so I'm just going to pack my bags and leave, let all those folks fight and die, and then I'll come back when it's all over, and I'll just live all the fruits of their labor that they're not even alive to have. That doesn't really sound great to me. That sound to me, that sounds like freeloading. That sounds like slacking, and that also sounds like severe cowardice. And so, in my opinion, if your country is in a war, you should have to serve. So I'd actually have to be in the group that says that I would want them returned back to Ukraine and put into the armed forces, not in the combat role, because if they're freaking out like that, it's probably not great to put them in a combat role. Put them in a rear line role where they're not getting shot at. But if they don't want to do that then there's going to have to be some punishments that are handed down. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. No, that sounds a little harsh. Some people are saying it sounds a little harsh. War is harsh, and for that reason, sometimes there are just necessary discomforts that have to be made on a national level, sacrifices that have to be made to ensure the existence of the nation at the end of the war. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we've also asked a follow-up. If you were a Ukrainian with the ability to leave and avoid frontline conscription, would you leave? Would you? I mean, how many people would leave? How many people would not leave? Matthew, would you leave? And what's everyone else saying about that?
Me personally, putting myself in the shoes of a Ukrainian who had been born and raised there, if I would, like, for example, I'm born and raised in Alabama. If war came to this country and I had the option to run off from it or stay here and fight, I would be out of my mind, I think, to run off from this country and leave behind everything I know, all the people I grew up with, and everyone who I've ever considered friends and family, to just run off and leave and say, okay, you're on your own, fend for yourself. To me, I would not be able to live with myself after doing that. That would be extremely cowardly, in my opinion. And if I were a Ukrainian in the same position as I would be here in this country, I would stay and fight. And if it meant basically giving up my life, I would say I'd much rather go that way than go being a coward and live the rest of my life knowing I was a coward. So I'm with the 76%. I would definitely remain and fight without a doubt. And while I understand war is a scary thing, and I'm sure that if war came here, even though I would stay and fight, I would be scared to death thinking, well, there's a pretty high possibility we're going to die here, because that's what happens in a very major war is people die all the time. But I would rather do that than go on to live with cowardice. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, I would largely agree with that. And also, I've seen some people saying, let's see, the war is, can't afford. Some people are saying, oh, here we go. Some people are saying, well, the rich don't fight. The rich kids don't fight. Well, that's the thing. They should. If they get a draft notice, they should. But I don't think, and this is something I don't really like. I don't like when people go and say, well, that guy got away with speeding, so I should be able to get away with speeding. Or that rich kid didn't have to fight, so I don't have to fight. No. That's not how it works. The premise is everyone in the country does their part. If you're called upon to serve in a draft notice, you serve. And I honestly would have to say that if I was president, those kids would be serving, because if they're called up and they're drafted. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that the government would go out of its way to draft rich kids. That would make no sense. But if they are randomly called upon, there is going to be no deferments. There's going to be no pretty much ripping up of draft notices. There's going to be no fleeing. There's going to be no bone spurs. There's not going to be anything like that. It's going to be, if you are called up, you will serve. Unless if there's an actual serious medical issue, but that will be addressed at MEPS. You will serve. Because there's going to be, everyone's an equal citizen. It doesn't matter wealth, doesn't matter nothing. America was founded on that principle, so if you were called upon, you will serve. It doesn't matter whether you're rich, poor, or in the middle. But with that, I hope that does address that well, because that's how it should work. I know some people are going to say that's not how it works, but that's how it should work, and you have to work off of the idea that's how it should at least work. Of course it doesn't, but if I became president, I can assure y'all that's how it would work if we were ever in a time of national crisis. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the Ukrainian frontline news. Starting off in the area around Sinkivka, where we got to see one of those brand new Bodana SPGs with a brand new hull. I gotta say, it's beautiful looking. And once again, a Ukrainian version of the Caesar SPG using a 152mm gun. It says 155mm. It's not. It's 152mm from Soviet vintage, but still a really whopper of a system, and hopefully incredibly accurate. With that, we're going to be moving on into our next bit of news a little bit farther down the lines near Svatove, where we got to see an Akhmat armored car with a cope cage, and one hell of a cope cage at that. Check this out.
And they basically built like a cage around that thing.
Man, they call that thing a cage fighter because the Russians are going to be fighting in that thing to get the hell out.
Is it to keep the missiles out or to keep the Russians in?
It's to keep both. it's missiles out, Russians in. I mean, they even Mad Max the wheel hubs. Look at that.
Oh no, they straight piped it too. That's a pretty loud truck.
The cope cages are really getting insane, though. And with that, 1 second, we're going to have to get rid of someone because I'm sorry. I will say this. On this channel, things run the way I want. If you don't like it, don't tell me to stop voicing my opinion. You will go. I mean, like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound rude, but I spend my days every day working on running this show. So I don't have people come in here and tell me how to run it. But with that, we're moving on into the area of Crimean, where we did get to see that an S-300 radar system got hit pretty damn hard. We don't know how bad the damage is to the actual radar system, but it appears that the vehicle has been knocked out, which is pretty freaking impressive. I gotta say, very nice to see. And once again, another S-300 air defense battery completely knocked out. But moving on from that and into the Crimean forest itself, we also got to see that Russian forces were destroyed in the forest today. And the trap was going hard, but here's the clip. And we see nice fires broiling throughout the forest. And I gotta say, Matthew, that these Russian armored vehicles are going into some nice boils, really. I mean, they are boiling down there.
Oils?
I mean, yeah, boiling, like water, you know what I mean? Like when you boil water, Matthew, you know what you could do with boiling water? You could do all kinds of things, Matthew. You could get safe drinking water. You could do some other things. You could create steam to operate in a steam engine. And steam is so important in the modern world. You could run nuclear reactors off of it. You could run coal or gas power plants. You could run ships. You could run all kinds of things. I mean, it's actually crazy the things you could do with boiling water. Boiling water is truly one of the finest wonders of the world. I'll be quite honest with you all on a mechanical and technological level. But you know what's even more impressive about boiling water is that it can make some of the most amazing beverages that you ever drink in your life, like coffee and tea, stimulants that people drink every single day that watch this channel to keep themselves up and keep them apprised of the news. And many people drink their boiled beverages in many different ways. Some people like to drink them out of thermoses. Some people like to drink them out of styrofoam cups. But the classiest of those folks, the people who really make themselves look above and beyond, drink their boiled beverages out of mugs. And that's why the official Enforcer store has the limited edition LSA flag mug. These things are absolutely impressive. Holding a whopping 11 fluid ounces, you could never put that much in your bladder at one time. Surely more than one needs, excessive to the extreme. The Lee Spring Army is here to stay. Not only that, it is made with a fine process called sublimation. They are 100% ceramic with a smooth black finish. These things are high quality, and you've got to admit, that LSA Eagle do be looking fly on the front. And not only that, it is microwave and dishwasher safe, meaning that you can do anything you need with this mug, and it will not come apart. Not only that, 10% of the profits from every single purchase made on the store will be donated to United 24 at the end of the limited edition merch run. So, there is so much to get a mug for. You can get an unlimited number of these things as well. Unlike the flags, where you can only get 2 per customer, you can get 20 of these things if you wanted. 1 of them. You can get none of them. But we'd be kind of sad if you got none. We'd cry a little. But beyond that, make sure to get yourself an LSA mug. The limited edition run will most likely be ending this Saturday at the end of that night's stream. And also, if you want to be able to get to this website to get the mug, type in officialenforcerstore.com or go to the link in the description below. It's the first link down there. You can click on that link and it will take you directly to this merch website where you can get yourself the mug. Make sure to get it while supplies last. Actually, the supplies will last, but it's a limited edition thing. So make sure to get it before the time runs out. But I hope that does address that the best I can, because y'all got to get a mug while y'all can. We have the mugs. I hope y'all have the mugs too. I hope to see these things around the world like we did last time with the flags. And I'm hearing that so many people are getting their flags today up in Canada and around the world, and it's wonderful to hear. But with that, we are now going to be moving on from that little bit of news. Well, not really news, but more so breaking update on the LSA flag mug. And we're now going to be moving on past the area of Bakhmut, as we haven't heard any major news down there, and on into the area in between Orlivka and Donetsk, as we got to hear that a Russian command post got hit pretty hard. And we're going to be muting that. But anyways, there's the Russian command base getting hit by some bombs. Beautiful, isn't it? And would you look at that? And with that, that's the end of that clip right there. Absolutely wonderful to see. And with that, we're now moving on into the area of Avdiivka, where we got to see that a Russian BMP got obliterated after it fired at a tree line. It effed around and it found out. There's the BMP right out there. It's laying down fire on that tree line. But in a second, it's about to have a fire laid down on it. And it's continuing to fire, but once again, in a second, it's about to learn. And there it goes. Oh!
Oh, dang. That threw shrapnel everywhere.
Shrapnel everywhere. I mean, literally everywhere. That thing turned into a bomb. I gotta say, interesting. Very interesting. I don't think they're going to be using that BMP anymore. I don't think the crew's even in that BMP anymore. But Matthew, something even better happened down near Krasnoorivka. Because we got to see that one of the house got defeated today. One of the house ended up hitting a mine and got stuck out in the field. There it is right there. That's the house. And we can see a tank coming up and trying to help recover it, but that will not go well.
Uh-oh. It's gonna happen.
And with that, that's the end of the clip. It was actually really short. For a second, I was staring. I was like, well, when's it going to happen? And nothing happened. It's just stuck out there. But beyond that, that's the end of that clip, and nice to see. But moving on from that and on to our next clip in the area around Crimean, we got to see the barrel of a cannon that the Russians were using exploded. We didn't get to know why, and we also didn't really get to get a good idea of the caliber of the barrel. But with that, we see them walking up here. And Matthew, just because we got a special mention in the chat from an incredible person, I got to go, aw, man. Aw, man. I think
Fill up that mug with tears.
aw, man. I literally completely forgot about the guy until you brought him up. Thank you. Aw, man. But this little...
He was one of those lurkers, by the way. Like, if you're curious, like, that guy was apparently one of his lurkers.
I've seen a decent amount of those lurkers popping up. You know, it's funny because, like, shouting out merch always gets them to pop up. You know, they boil to the surface when a merch announcement comes around. And it's always like, huh, interesting, isn't it? Like, interesting, isn't it? But anyways, with that, we're moving on from that clip and a little bit further down the lines and into the area of Uspanivka, where we got to see that the Ukrainian, in a Ukrainian Su-27, I believe, fired off some AGM-88 HOMs today. 2 of them at once. And they're going to be causing some harm. When you see the Su-27 firing both of them simultaneously, which is pretty cool. Put an LSA in the chat, everyone. Put an LSA in the chat for hot dogs. And we see them firing off another 2 AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles. And then the clip resets. But still, really nice to see the Ukrainian Air Force in action and trying to do anything they can to help out on the front lines. Moving on from that into our next clip, we also got to see that the 81st Brigade ended up hitting a pair of Russians while the music blows my eardrums out. And we can see here the Dragon, and we can see them throwing up the 81st. And now we can see a Russian down there who's just chilling. And we're going to end the clip right there. But, as you can see, things did not go well for them. Moving on from that, and out of the area of southern Ukraine, it is now time for us to go over to something that I saved for last. It is something that I knew a lot of old guards and channel legends would love to see. And I gotta say, it's something that is very interesting to me, because how do I say it? It has something a lot to do with the channel. We don't know why it was brought up. We didn't get a special shout out for it, but there's only one channel on YouTube that really hypes up a specific kind of mammal that looks a little bit like a large rodent. And it was pointed out today by a large group that's in Ukraine, and it was very interesting to see. But the marmots are here.
Hello there! No way!
Oh, hello there!
Hello there.
Would you
also,
like
you
a
know, by
plum?
the way, this was actually posted, I think, about a month ago or so. So it's been up for a while.
Oh, dang. I didn't even notice. I didn't even realize. But, oh, hello there. Would you like a plum? Look at that. Oh, man. Where's the fly?
Man, I didn't even know they had marmots like this in Ukraine. Like, there's many of them. And they're just hanging out right there in Odessa.
Man, they're just chilling. They're honestly just chilling out there, standing up like they got nothing better to do. I love to see it, though. And, of course, the Lee Spring Army is around you. It's in nature. The marmot is a symbol of the Lee Spring Army. And we can see that the marmots continue to triumphantly rise over the fields of Ukraine and show that they're there, just like the Lee Spring Army will always be over the fields of Ukraine. Isn't it beautiful? Poetic, even, I gotta say, and nice to know that the marmots are out there. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit. It's not our marmot. It's not the one from Jacob Lugosi, but it's still Jacopo Lugosi, I mean. But it's still a marmot, and it counts. But with that, it's time for us to move on north and up into the city of Kyiv, because it's time for us to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 791 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Speech, please.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Сьогодні президент Байден підписав ухвалений Конгресом пакет підтримки. Підтримки, зокрема, української. Шлях довжиною півроку подолали. Хто б що не казав, але ми здобуваємо підтримку, якої потребуємо. Потребуємо, щоб надалі захищати життя від російських ударів. Цими днями вже максимально активно працювали з нашими американськими друзями на всіх рівнях, щоб оперативно наповнити цей пакет від Сполучених Штатів саме такою зброєю, яка потрібна нашим воїнам. Від атакамсів і артилерії, від протитанкової зброї і ракет для хаймарсів до необхідної ППО і техніки. Я вдячний президенту Байдену, Конгресу, усім американцям, які відчувають, що потрібно вибивати землю з-під ніг у Путіна, не підкорятись йому. І лише так буде дійсно менше загроз свободі. Разом ми можемо це забезпечити. Дякую усім американцям на оборонних підприємствах, кожному штату, які виробляють зброю, яка зараз реально захищає демократію і наш спосіб життя. Вся наша співпраця України та Сполучених Штатів, кожен прояв підтримки нашого захисту зараз роблять сильніше обидва наші народи і усіх наших партнерів. Весь світ, який прагне жити за правилами, а не в умовах насильства і хаосу. Зараз будемо робити все, щоб компенсувати півроку, які пройшли у дебатах, у сумнівах. Те, що російський окупант зміг за цей час, те, що Путін тепер планує, ми маємо розвернути проти нього. Всі його дії на фронті, всі його удари по нашій енергетиці, інфраструктурі, весь його терор проти наших міст, сіл, все це повинно мобілізувати нас, кожного в світі, хто дійсно цінує життя, на більший тиск на Росію. Дуже важливо, щоб всі наші домовленості з президентом Байденом були реалізовані на 100%. Дякую, Америко. Сьогодні ж провів зустріч з дипломатами, які працюють в Україні, представниками держав-партнерів міжнародних організацій, щодо наших кроків заради саміту миру, заради наближення реального миру. Ми зараз маємо реальний шанс об'єднати світову більшість і примусити Росію визнавати міжнародне право, примусити Росію до миру. Світ має цю силу. І в дипломатії ми повинні виграти так само, як і в іншому. Тобто не дати Путіну розколоти світ, не дати йому зірвати саміт миру. Ми маємо залучити до роботи заради справжнього миру якнайбільше держав. Сьогодні я представив наше бачення щодо цього усім послам, які працюють в Україні, та закликав їх ще активніше працювати, щоб перший саміт у Швейцарії дав потрібний результат. Вже найближчим часом запрошення на саміт миру у Швейцарії будуть надіслані лідерам світу. Ще одне. Була сьогодні доповідь головкома Сирського та міністра оборони Умєрова про постачання для наших воїнів, про підготовку наших бригад, про наші дії на передовій і проти російської воєнної системи загалом. В усіх форматах, у кожній площині нам потрібна сила, щоб завдяки сильним позиціям та сильним діям швидше досягти миру. Дякую усім, хто допомагає, дякую кожному і кожній, хто б'ється та працює заради України. Пишаюся нашими людьми. Слава Україні!
And
Героям слава!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 791 of the News of the War in Ukraine. And it's time for us to move on into the second segment. It's an incredibly fun one where we get to talk to all of y'all about whatever y'all want to talk about. We get to talk about the cities of the world. We get to look at hood reviews. We get to look at pizza. We get to look at foods. We get to look at history. We get to do anything and everything y'all want to do. Kind of as a thank you for listening to the news for an entire hour and 44 minutes tonight, which is a very long news segment. Very rarely do you get raw news like that in its concentrated form anywhere in the world these days. But beyond that, we have to make sure to get to address all the questions that we've asked y'all and all the questions y'all have asked us in return and sit around and have a good moment. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so let's get back to hopping into those super chat questions. And first up, we have a $50 donation from Jose Garcia. And thank you very much, Jose, for that generous support. He says, awesome job as usual, boys, and great news about the aid bill. And I'm curious about whether there's been any instance of Russia actually intercepting Western aid crossing the border, and would this be a concern given the recent boost of aid?
And I thank you so much for the support, Jose Garcia. And thank you so much for saying it was an awesome job as usual, meaning that you think it's great all the time. I could read. It's like I literally just rephrased that, but still, thank you so much for the support and thank you for the kind words as well. And also, it is great news about the aid bill. It's incredibly good news. And also, I don't think we've heard of any attempts by the Russians that have been successful of intercepting Western aid that's been crossing the border. Into Ukraine. I don't think that's ever happened. If anything, Polish blockades on the other side of the border have stopped more Ukraine aid than anything so far. Once it's finally almost on its way to Ukraine. And let's see. And I don't think it would be that much of a concern, given the boost in aid, because I don't think the Russians try and boost anything out of the aid shipments we give. And also, considering that it's transported by the U.S. Army all the way to the border of Ukraine, and then from there it's transported by the Ukrainian Army, it would probably be highly unlikely that the Russians could ever get there in the middle and try and steal anything out of it without anyone noticing. And also on top of that, we put about $26 million of that $61 billion support bill into funding some inspectors from the U.S. Armed Forces to continuously oversee our equipment and make sure that none of it ends up in questionable hands. Also meaning that there is a surety that if anything like that does happen, alarm bells will be sounding. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, Jose Garcia, but thank you so much for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you who throw in support like that help to make this thing possible. And not only that, it was a really good question. And I always love to hear amazing questions, also just fun facts and everything in general. This is really the only point in the stream, beyond the small question segment that we always do in the middle of the news, where I really get to talk to y'all, because there are so many of y'all. There are 6.2 thousand people here right now, live on air, and 45,000 people have watched this stream since it started. And when you really think about those kinds of numbers, it's really hard for me to be able to get to talk to the entirety of the LSA on an individual level. And so super chats and live chats are one of the best ways I get to do that. And I get to kind of talk to y'all or conversate with y'all at least the best I can running this channel. And so thank you so much once again, Jose Garcia, for giving me that little opportunity. And thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running at the exact same time. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we're on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next super chat, we have a 20 from Nicholas Condor, who's been around for a very long time, and thank you, Nicholas, as well. He says, are there any plans to make any t-shirts with the new LSA Eagle logo? And if so, sign me up for at least one. And Nicholas, that is on the list of possibilities in the future. We're not totally decided on the next month's merch run just yet, and we will be keeping that secret until we actually officially announce it. But we actually have, right now, about 10 options or so that we're considering that we could run next month. We're trying to pick the best one and also get our test samples and things like that in to make sure we have the best item on the store. So t-shirts is one of those. And honestly, if I had a poll like with more options than simply 4, I would run a poll about it. But there's just not enough options to be able to run that poll and actually get a real sampling. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, we would love to do t-shirts, but there are some logistical challenges with anything that has to be sized, where there can be different sizes. There's always a bit of an issue, and also we have to make a male and female version of each merch run as well. So, you know, if we did like something like that where it was kind of customizable. So that would be a little difficult, but I would say that it's not out of the question. We are looking into trying to do something like that in the future. It just really matters if we can get all of the logistics down in the end and try and figure out how to do it. We might do shirts as pre-orders, possibly, because there's really no other way to do it all too well, because if we did pre-orders, then people could order as many shirts as they wanted and also what size they would need, and then once that limited edition run is closed and the pre-orders are closed, then we could actually go and order the exact number of shirts that people ordered and then send them out that way. It would probably take a lot longer for people to get the shirts that way, but it would be able to allow us the ability to make sure that we're not really logging down a massive amount of inventory, and then, you know, probably most certainly taking a loss on that in the end, and, you know, and then that poses a lot of issues and problems of its own. But still, thank you for the support, Nicholas Condor, and we will be trying to find a way to make that possible and make that a reality in the future. It's just that it might be a little bit more difficult. But still, thank you, and thank you for being one of our Canadian viewers as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 20 from Marion Deemer, longtime channel legend. And Marion said, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, you guys rock, and thank you for taking us with you on this venture.
And thank you for coming with me on this venture, Marion Deemer, because nobody had to. That's the crazy thing about this channel. No one had to join us. And look at all we've done. We've done so much. We've raised $1.3 million for Ukraine. I feel like we're kind of going to be at that level for the rest of the war. But $1.3 million for Ukraine. We've made a massive community. It's one of the most active ones in the Ukraine war sphere, I believe. Let me check that really quickly. I'm actually very interested in this. Let me go check this. Let's see here. Hang on, Matthew. Let me go over here. Yeah, we're actually fairly active. So out of the whole Ukraine war sphere, I just had to make sure to check because I had to make sure that I was right again. There is only one YouTube channel that is outdoing us at this point in the entire Ukraine war sphere for monthly viewership. A singular one, and you know who it is, Matthew. I think everyone kind of has an idea.
I think so.
But
There's only one guy.
yeah, but beyond that, we are beating literally everyone else. You name them, we're beating them right now in viewership by about 40 to 50%. And that's absolutely crazy because we are hardly the size of many other channels, but our community is way more active compared to theirs. It is hyperactive, really, even compared to most other YouTube communities. Because what channel do y'all know that has 209,000 subscribers but gets around, right now it's around 7 million views a month? There's not many. There's not many. There's really not a lot of channels even below 1 million subscribers that are getting around 7 million views a month. But this one is. And so that's absolutely crazy to us. And I got to thank all 7 million of those viewers and the 209,000 subscribers who have been with us this entire length of the way for watching this channel and being on this journey with us, because we would be doing this regardless whether y'all are here or not. So really, the people who ought to be thanked, Marion, or is you and everyone like you who's watching this channel, because without y'all, we wouldn't be able to go on the journey with anyone. We would be going it alone. And so thank you so much once again for those incredibly kind words. Thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And thank you for being an old guard of this channel and being here for truly forever. And so with that, long live the Spring Army. Thank you so much once again. And we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Char G, who puts in a $20 donation and says 2 in and out double doubles for the boy, Nom Nom, and T1 FTC. And Char G, I'm telling you what, I'll take a double double. I'll take it on the animal one, or the animal grill, what are they called it? What's it called?
I don't know. I've never been to the place before.
Animal something. It's they do their burgers somewhere. I don't know. I didn't get to order it, so I don't recall it. But it's a double something, animal something. But I want that so bad again. But we're nowhere close to an In-N-Out burger, sadly. But thank you very much. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, Shargy, thank you so much for the support. And thank you for supporting 2 In-N-Out double doubles for the boys. Thank you for that. And also, Nom Nom. And also, we will take one for the live chat. But before we do that really quickly, I have to say that we do not, it's more like I do not really eat out much anymore. I have been able to find a source of sustenance that is truly world class and at a very good price. I'm not going to say the name of who it is because it's a company that could potentially sponsor a video in the future, and so we don't want to say the name of who they are, but I will say this: the food that they have is not that expensive, especially for the kind of quality you're getting, and it is schmacking. I mean, it's absolutely delicious. If we can ever get a sponsorship from them on a video, because by the way, I have to remind everyone really quickly, live streams are ad-free, sponsor-free. Our YouTube videos have to run under a different principle, and also the sponsorships are going to be used to build up a budget, so that way we can start making high-quality documentary videos in the future. So there's a point and a purpose to all that, but if we can get them as a sponsor, I'll say their name. If we can get them as a sponsor on a video, not on a live stream. But the food's unbelievable. It is freaking nuts. I'm we now I make sure to get a little weekly plan. I've actually been on it for like a few weeks now, and the stuff they put out is crazy. I mean, like Matthew can say, is legitimately crazy. But we'll be seeing about
That's so good. And I think some people already know what we're talking about. I see them put it in the chat.
Yeah, I see some people putting it in, and they're right. I'm not gonna say who's right, but it's insane stuff. I mean, I'm absolutely blown away with it. If we can ever get them as a sponsor, I will be making sure. Holy moly, we just got Walter
Dang.
Lakota as a sponsor, but
The
beyond that,
bosun's here.
the bosun is here. The bosun has arrived. But beyond that, thank you so much for the support, Sharky, and getting that in and out. But I'll tell you this: I no longer eat fast food. I've moved up to another level, and it's actually almost the same price, which is crazy because each meal, I'll tell you, that each meal is like around $12 to $11, which you would think sounds expensive, right? But then you think, well, a Five Guys meal costs like $14 or $15 for a single person. And really any fast food meal these days costs around $12 to $15. So you're actually getting a cheaper meal with these folks. And not only that, I think it tastes a lot better. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you so much, Shargy, once again for the support. And thank you for sponsoring our In and Outs. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, in our next super chat, y'all might know who this one's going to. It's going to Walter A. Lakota Jr. to put in a massive $250 donation to the channel. That is huge. Thank you very much, Walter, for the massive support. He says, Aloha, the Enforcer Matt, and LSA from OG Ellison Bosun. And about yesterday's question, a sailor is military or naval person, and a mariner is a civilian or professional sailor, and a book to look for and to read is Merchantman or Man of War. And he says it talks about the subject you mentioned.
And thank you, Walter A. Lakota, a very learned man of the Merchant Marines. And I gotta say, thank you for the massive, unbelievable support, and thank you for circling back and getting me an answer to last night's question, because I wondered, what is the definition of a sailor? And apparently it's not anyone who's out there at sea, it's only the ones who are in a military or naval profession at sea. Those are sailors. The others are mariners. Now, Walter A. Lakota, I have another question for you. What is marinade?
Marinade? You mean like the stuff you put on the meats?
Yeah. What is that? Like, where do they fall in the category? Is it like in between sailor and mariner? Because it kind of sounds like both. Or it was an entirely different thing. I'm just kidding. But beyond that, thank you for sharing that. And I will make sure to try and get that book in the future. Reading is tough. Not because I can't read. I can read. But because we have very little time behind the scenes. Because today was actually a fairly busy day. I was down here trying to do a little bit. We didn't get a video out, but I did still do all of the work to try and get a video out, and then ended up giving up because the news wasn't good enough. But beyond that, thank you so much for recommending the book. I will make sure to look into it, and thank you for getting back with me on that answer, so that way we know what a sailor and a mariner really is, and what they're supposed to be. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the massive, unbelievable support, Walter A. Lakota, and thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you who make this channel possible with support that is unbelievable, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. We wouldn't be able to keep it alive. And not only that, we wouldn't be able to get on air each and every night. And so thank you so much once again for that unbelievable support. I truly can't even believe it. And thank you for being the OG Ellison Bosun, baby. And so with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you once again.
All right, and also real quick, I did put up a poll. I was curious here. Even though I said I didn't have enough options, I tried to shrink things down into big categories to get an idea of where everybody's coming from on the merch store. It says, what would you rather have on the merch store? 43% said t-shirts / hoodies. 26% said gear / mugs / posters. 22% said hats and caps. And 8% said coffee / food items. So the 8% on the coffee and food items, not a very popular category, it seems. So we'll have to keep that one in mind. But it looks like the 44%, the majority, or at least the most popular, is t-shirts and hoodies. And that's something we have not run on the store yet. We haven't run hats and caps either. The only thing so far we have done is gear, mugs, and posters. That's what we've done now. It's flags and mugs is all we've done. So it looks like t-shirts might be at the top of the list according to what this poll is saying here. But Enforcer, what say you?
And coffee and food items was down there at the freaking bottom. I mean, like, it's not even close. That's interesting. We'll have to take that and run with it, because that is some very interesting feedback. And now that we've gotten feedback that is that damning, I will actually tell you all why that's interesting to me. The next month's merch drop, was, until right now, because now I'm going to be changing this, it was actually going to be a exclusive line of LSA branded coffee grinds, and it was going to be, pretty cool, pretty neat. It was going to be packaged a special way. But we're either going to put that on hold indefinitely or wait a while to do that, because it doesn't look like a lot of y'all really want that. It looks like a lot of y'all would rather want t-shirts and hoodies. And t-shirts and hoodies we can do. It's going to be a little bit more difficult, but we can certainly do it. And so we will be looking into that. Maybe that will be the next month's merch drop. Will be a special style of shirt or something along those lines. And I gotta say, thank you, everyone, for sharing your input, because I find that input to be invaluable, because it allows us to dedicate our time and efforts into things that would have been very cool. Also, we may throw in, because I'm seeing a lot of this as well, we may throw in some patches with the shirts. We may sell them as a set, so there will be shirts that come with a patch, because the patches we wouldn't be able to sell on their own, because the patches would probably be fairly cheap in reality. And so the shipping costs would probably be twice as much as the patch itself. So we would rather sell the shirt and a patch, most likely as a combined set. So we may do like an LSA patch, and then the next time we do a merch item, we may throw in a different patch, like a Marmot patch or a Honey Badger patch or something along those lines, and come up with different emblems for different fictitious units of the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. But some very interesting concepts. We might, Maddie, honestly, we might want to be a little bit more transparent with everyone about merchandise releases in the future, because getting input like that would really help us going forward with making sure that we're getting merch out that people would really want to have.
Indeed, that's true. And also, by the way, Enforcer, on the issue you were mentioning earlier about getting sizing and things like that for items like t-shirts and also any merch that requires sizing, on those items, we'll most likely have to use a print-on-demand provider for those, just because it makes it a lot easier on our end, and also for the person that's purchasing it as well, to be able to get the size they need. And also, if there needs to be an exchange or something like that, it also makes it easy on that front as well, potentially. We'll have to look into it. Instead of doing like a pre-order system, because if we do pre-orders and stuff, and that could be a little bit complex, even knowing the sizes ahead of time. And if we decide to do something extra with it, like for example a patch or a sticker, we might mail that out in an envelope separately that will arrive at a different date. That might be a better way to do it.
That might be. And so with that, thank you for sharing that with everyone, Matthew. Thank you for sharing that with me. And with that, I think we are now on to the next question.
All right, and the next one goes to Destiny Edgington, who puts in a 20 and says, "Love the channel and the faith in Ukraine."
Hey, and I love that you love the channel and our faith in Ukraine. It's unwavering, and it's for good reason. I saw some people out there go, "Aw, man, Ukraine is losing. They're falling apart. Aw, man." And we were like, "Get the hell out of here." And then it paid off, because the Ukrainians, now have 62 billion actually in support from America coming around the corner. So I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, and thank you for really enjoying this channel and our faith in Ukraine, because folks like you help to make this channel possible, so that way we can continue to stay on air as a voice of faith in the Western world. Not only that, the nations that are having to face down the axis of evil: Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and South Korea, among many others. And so with that, thank you so much greatly once again for your support, and thank you for the kind words as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Ari Sawini, Kiwi Wife and Finn, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Ari, for that support. And they said, things in Ukraine are starting to seem a bit more positive with F-16 and Western support, and great news.
And I'd have to say, it's incredible news. You were absolutely dead on the nail with that. It's going to be wonderful stuff to see, and I cannot wait to see those F-16s in the air flying in Ukraine, because once that happens, I'm sure that a lot will start to change in the war, at least in the air war campaign, and also for Russian anti-air coverage over the country. A lot will change. And I gotta thank you so much once again for that massive, incredible support, Ari Sweeney, being a channel legend, and also being the Kiwi Wife and Finn. We're always happy to know that y'all are down there doing your thing. And also, have you noticed, Matthew, that Ari Sweeney went from New Zealand dollars to Australian dollars?
Did they?
They
I didn't notice
did.
that actually.
They did. I don't think they're Kiwi wife and Finn anymore. I think they're Aussie wife and Finn. Are y'all on vacation? Have y'all moved? What? Answer me. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for support. And we will have to revisit the Kiwi wife and Finn thing, depending on if you've moved to Australia, which would be very interesting if you had. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And also, real quick, I saw something very interesting. I never even thought of this. Not even, it hasn't ever popped in my mind one single minute. This is a new idea to me. I saw Andrea Scout in the live chat say, merch idea. What about a custom bug out bag / emergency tools like fire starter set for the merch store? I've never really considered that, but I'll be honest with you. When I first read that, I was like, I don't know. But I was like, wait a minute. I was like, that actually might be a decent idea. Because if you had like the enforcer on the outside of it, that might be pretty cool. That's actually a hobby of mine, by the way, is doing bug out bags and things like that. I'm not really a prepper per se, but I like to have like survival tools and emergency stuff on the side. But that's actually a pretty good one. Enforcer, what do you think about that right off the bat?
That is a pretty cool one. I don't know how cheap that bag would be. That thing would probably be pretty expensive in reality because we probably pack it with a whole bunch of goodies. But
I could actually get that cost down there pretty low, actually, because I know all about that industry in that sector. I could probably actually do something pretty interesting with that. That's kind of like my expertise in the hobby side of things.
You know, one thing I was actually told the other day is that it'd be really cool if we could make plastic. Now this one was a little like it was like a little bit of a stretch. I don't know if we could do it. I don't know if a lot of people would want these. But limited edition plastic AR magazines with the LSA Eagle printed onto them. I was like, that is pretty neat. I don't know how many people would get that though, because we, of course, we want to make sure that's something that everyone would want to get. Folks in the UK, and really every country outside of America, probably wouldn't be able to get those. And also out of all of our folks who watch from the United States, I don't know how many of y'all actually, go to the range often. So then that might be a bit of an issue. But it was still a really neat concept. But a bug out bag would be a pretty neat idea. I think that would be pretty cool. So we might look into that. We might do something like that in the future. We'll see.
Oh, you know what would be sick is if you got one of those tactical backpacks. You know, like the ones I have, like the black ones. It has the Velcro spots for the patches to be put on the back. If you had like an enforcer one and also the LSA flag patch like put onto the custom like bug out bag as well, and then inside of it, it has like the crucial components for like a survival kit. That would be super sick.
That would be really cool, actually. That would be pretty freaking neat. And we could pack it up with all kinds of stuff, like a pocket knife, maybe some like repellent, so some cool stuff.
We could even get you to get your gold Sharpie out and sign outside the bag. That would be pretty sick as well.
Oh God, no, not again.
Put you back to work.
Yeah.
I'll be sweating in the sweatshop again.
Yeah,
I'm determined.
Man, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. Y'all, I'm telling y'all, it was rough down here. My hand was truly hurting so bad it was hard to sign the last few flags. It was that bad. But if y'all want it, I could sign the bug out bags. Like I don't know. I think I'm gonna have to be quite honest. I think we'd have to charge extra for autographs from here forward because it was actually a lot of work. We're generally trying to keep the number a little bit under wraps about how many flags actually went out. But I can say that there was well over 400 of them. I will say that. So it was above 400. That's one thing I can tell y'all. And signing as many flags as I did, it was actually a legitimate nightmare. By the time it got up into the high 200s, my hand was hurting really badly. So we would probably have to make it to where it was charged extra if there was an autograph on it, just so that way we could lower the amount of autographs that had to be done, and I don't end up getting carpal tunnel syndrome. Really just for that reason. Not because, I can't sign unless, if we make more money off it. It's really just so that way we can try and limit the amount of autographs I'd have to do. But with that...
Well, I think on the bug out bags, we'd have to limit it to something like 50 or 100 in total, probably is the limit, because that's going to be a lot of logistics like on that, because there'd be multiple items going in the bags. Also, they're large, so the shipping is going to be kind of interesting as well. And we might not even have enough space just to do 100 of them because our little shipping area is not that large. So on that, it would probably be very limited on that run. Probably only 100 max.
Yeah, probably. But if it's
it might actually be a side item. Actually, maybe just for 1 month we're going to do that. Maybe it's a side item, just 100 of them or something. And 100 wouldn't be too bad. You signing that wouldn't be too bad.
I don't think that. No, 100 I could do, but if it was hundreds, though, you know, like say like 700 of them, no, absolutely not. I cannot do. I cannot do hundreds of autographs again. I don't like. I don't think I'd ever want to do that again because it was a cool idea until I started doing it, and then I was like, oh, this was a bad idea. Like, you know, after the first like, you know, 250 of them, I was like, oh, this is a terrible idea. I don't know why I ever agreed to do this. I was like, this is tough. But yeah, I do say this though. It looks so cool when y'all hold up y'all's flags and they have they have the autograph on them. It looks sick. It's a really good looking autograph. You know, not to like toot my own horn there. It's really good looking. It looks clean. So I'm really happy I did it, but I don't want to do it again. I'll say that it was tough. But with that, thank you so much once again for bringing up that interesting idea, Andreas Scout. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Panama Floyd, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Panama, for that support. He says, didn't the USAF Thunderbirds go back to F-16s from T-38s years back because Falcons had more power? And IIRC, even the first-gen F-16s had more thrust than weight.
And let me check really quickly, because if I remember correctly, I think you're right. But let me double check. Let's see here. Thunderbirds, I do not want the Air Force website. I want Wikipedia, because that's where we're going to find the info. Yeah. All right. So, as many of y'all know, the Thunderbirds were in fact stacking bodies in World War I, World War II, and Korea. Then beyond that, they cooled down and they became an air demonstration team. But beyond that, this is looking pretty sick. And let's see here. Oh, here we go. Here's some of the aircraft that they had. The first aircraft that the Thunderbirds actually had was the F-84 Thunderjet, which is, you know, classic. Honestly, Korean classic. Then after that, they went and got the T-33 Shooting Stars, which are really like a P-80 or an F-80. Really the same thing. And then they had F-100 Super Sabres, which you can see right there. Then they had F-4 Phantoms. Cool fact, by the way, many of y'all will be very interested in this. Look at this. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, and everyone's going to be looking at that tail, and they're going to think, "Huh, that's a camera problem." The tail on the rudder on the F4 and number 4 F4 is completely black. A cool fact about that: they actually ended up painting the tail completely black because in some of the formations that they fly in the Thunderbirds, the number 4 aircraft usually ends up directly behind the number 1 aircraft and a little bit below. So all of that soot of the unburned fuel from the 2 engines of the number 1 F4 would end up coating the number 4 tail on this F4 completely black. So later on, they just blacked out the rudder and just made it a solid black paint job. But the rest of the aircraft had its normal livery. But that is a really cool fact about the Thunderbirds during the F4 era. But moving on from that, they did have the T-38 Talons pictured here. These are F5s. These are like the training version of the F5. I'm not a big fan of them. And then, let's see, 1974. Okay, so let's see. They had the F4 Phantoms, and then they had the F-16s afterwards. Let's see, the teams. Let's see, the reinstitute. Hang on, let me see here. So let's see, they actually used the T-38 Talons for fuel consumption purposes, so that way they could keep running air shows, but more economically. And then after that, because the T-38 Talons were in the team before the F-16 had even been introduced in the service, then after that, then they got the F-16s, which we can see right here. Which honestly, to me, I'd have to say these are probably the coolest looking aircraft that the Thunderbirds have ever had, because the F-4 Phantom was all right. This is probably the close second. But the T-38s, I didn't see it. The F-100s, the T-33, and the F-84 weren't that great. So I'd honestly have to say it really is the F-16s that are the best aircraft that they've ever had. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you so much for the support. But from what I can tell, they didn't replace the F-16 with the T-38. The T-38 just came before the F-16 was really the interim in between the two, because they couldn't use the F-4s during that time because of the oil crisis of 73. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for a very interesting question, Panama Floyd, and I hope I was able to answer that accurately. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to JGB, who puts in a $10 donation and says, It looks like lots of aid arrives in the few coming weeks, and good thing, of course, but is it a coincidence because it's all at once?
And I don't know if it is a coincidence. It probably is, most likely, because a lot of people always think that there's a lot of planning that goes on behind the scenes. To be quite honest with y'all, there really isn't. There's not a lot of strings back there. In reality, it just kind of happens mostly by coincidence. So I would have to say, in my opinion, that's probably the case with all of the support getting there in such a short amount of time. Really is most likely coincidence that it's all happening at this point. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one, not our second one, but our next one goes to Ari Sweeney yet again. Puts in a 10.
Hey!
It says, Anzac Day greetings. Public holiday here in Australia and also in New Zealand as well.
Hey, and great to hear. Happy Anzac Day to everyone who's from Australia and New Zealand, because that is a commemoration of the Anzac forces that ended up fighting at Gallipoli, which was one of the worst campaigns of World War I. Happened in 1915. Really cool story. Make sure to go check up on it and read on it. But beyond that, I'd have to say, thank you so much for being here with us on Anzac Day of all days. It is a national holiday in Australia and New Zealand, and I hope that y'all are enjoying the day off and making sure to remember that many sacrifices were made by the Western world to lead to the world we had today, and Anzac Day is a part of that. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best I can. And hello once again to Kiwi Wife and Finn. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And I just got to say, Enforcer, I'm buzzing about that bug out bag idea. Like, I really am just over here buzzing about that. Like, I'm sitting here running all these, like, ideas through my head right now. I'm like, oh my God, I think this is going to be, like, a very, very cool merch run whenever we run it. I'm not sure if it'll be next month because, you know, that's a lot of planning to do very quickly. I'm not sure if I can pull that off. But in some future month, that'll probably be one of the things we do, and it's gonna be so cool. I have so many plans. I'm not gonna expose any of the plans I'm coming up with in my head right now, but it's gonna be very cool, packed with Easter eggs in the bag as well, and also cool features that you're not gonna find in anything else. But obviously, I do have planning for that. But anyways, moving on to our next one here, it goes to Gordon Vorenkamp, who puts in a 10 and says, learning about super chats.
Hey, and thank you for supporting the channel, and thank you for learning about super chats. Super chats are something that some people are a little reluctant about, and so some people don't support just because they don't really know how super chat works. But it's actually really easy. I mean, it's an incredibly easy system. You just click the super chat button, you put in how much you want to support the channel with, and then you get to throw in an additional comment, input the card information the first time, and then it remembers it from then forward, and then you can super chat away all you want. It's a system that I believe in and trust in, because while it takes 30% of every super chat, it also ensures that y'all know that the channel only runs its support through one way. Not only that, it's as transparent as possible. Every single bit of support that comes into the channel pops up at the top of the live chat, so you know y'all can actually see every bit of support we get. It's not a mystery. And not only that, it allows us to be able to address folks live on air, which all those things I think is very important and really crucial to the way we run this channel. And I got to thank you so much for taking the time to support the channel, finding it worthwhile to support it all, and finding it worthwhile enough to even take the time to learn how the super chats work, because that's incredible of you. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Tactical Bite, who puts in a 10 and says, any idea why there was an Iran government private jet flying out of St. Petersburg headed back to Iran today?
Let's see. A Iranian private jet heading out of St. Petersburg heading to Iran. I believe that was the Russian delegation that is visiting Iran, or that was the Iranian delegation that just got done visiting the Russians. I'm not really sure, but we have heard that the North Koreans are apparently going to be making a little trip to Iran to get to talk to Khomeini, and that's a little interesting because that's the first time that's happened in over 5 years. So a very rare instance. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, let's see. Oh yeah, look at that. I was looking at what you said, man, because you said they won't work with anyone that's under 500K. I was like, what? Who? I was like, oh. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it.
The bunker branding people. I think they require. I think I looked on their website before, because they seem like they're pretty good merch company. And back when I was trying to partner with someone before we decided to run our own, I was like, oh, they look pretty good. But now I saw on their website it says like at least 500,000 subs or something like that. I was like, ah, dang, we're like so far off from that. But luckily, it turned out for the better though, because now we're running our own merch store. And in my opinion, I don't think it can be running any better than it's currently being run because, like they always say, to do it right, sometimes you got to do it yourself. And not saying the other guys wouldn't do it right, but I just know that we can go the extra mile to make sure it's really good. And also, I like to control the quality myself. I don't really like to outsource that, especially not after Teespring. I don't want to do that again. So yeah, I'm very keen about running it ourselves now. We'll probably never work with anyone on the merch in the future except ourselves. So that's you'll know it's quality from this point forward.
I'll be honest. One thing we have learned over doing YouTube is the only way that you can assure quality on every level is to do it ourselves. Because if we ever give it out to anyone to try and do, it is not going to be up to our standards. And I will say, now that the whole Teespring thing is a good ways behind us, Teespring was a pretty good bit below our standards after we, ended up getting with them for a couple of months. That's why we ended up shutting down the store because me personally, Matthew also as well, was not happy with any part of anything about Teespring. And then on top of that, as we were exiting out, then they wanted to start being a little pissy and start messing with the domain that we had with them. And that was, really the chef's kiss on top of everything. Is, everything was, in my opinion, not done too well, and then on top of that, they can't even give us our domain. So then we had to get the official Enforcer store domain for our own store. So that's something. Like I'm not saying that they're a bad company. I'm just saying that in our personal experience, and if I was running a YouTube channel again and I had to pick a distributor or a third party merch producer, I wouldn't go with them. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next super chat here, we have one from Khan, who puts in a 10 and says, I am a blogger and not as listened to as you guys, but there was a massive increase in comments on multiple social media sites, completely overrun by Russians pretending to be angry Americans against Ukraine. And welcome, Khan, to the world of the insanity of the bots. And also, mixed in between the mass amounts of Russian bots there are out there are actually some real people that have been brainwashed, who also add their 2 bits in and take a swipe at people like us, and also apparently you now as well. So, there you go. It's just what it comes with the territory, basically, and you got to get used to it, because if you don't get used to it, it'll drive you nuts. Because people are kind of crazy out there. There's a large group of crazy people that run around just basically trying to tear everyone down, and we've experienced that a lot. But it's just part of the territory, so I'm not going to complain about it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, Con, really cool to know that you're also a fellow blogger, or a live streamer, something along those lines. But there is always a massive increase in those kinds of comments, and it's crazy to witness it. And also, like Matthew was saying, some of those people are actually real people, which is even all the more interesting because bots are actually largely benevolent. I mean, or benign, really. They don't really cause a lot of damage. It's just that they say stuff and they're hoping to change people's mindsets by making them feel like they're not a part of the mob and they should join their mob. That's really what that's about. But the real people are the ones you actually have to be a little concerned about. But then I'm going to say that you shouldn't be concerned about them here in a second, so don't get concerned. But this is why you should be a little concerned. Is because the real people are usually psychotic. I'm not even kidding. Like, they're actually crazy people. They'll end up trying to track down where you live, your family, anything about you, and then they'll end up trying to threaten you. And we've had our fair share of death threats over time. Lately, they've actually been dying down a little bit, which is really weird because we've actually grown a lot more. And now that we've grown more, the death threats are kind of dying down a little bit. But one thing I would say is that never really, I'll never pay attention to it. Like a word of advice after doing this for 2 years and really learning a lot about how this goes. Never really get that involved with what bots say or what anyone says about you, because the reality is that the damage that they can do is incredibly small, usually most of the time, especially to one personally, because usually people actually have enough common sense to look through the lies, or the people like that are usually self-destructive. Hot Dog Man is a great example of a self-destructive character that will run their head into a wall until their skull caves in just because they can. And so we don't even really pay a lot of attention to him. We've even heard that apparently we've gotten enough traction now that some pro-Russian channels on YouTube have actually taken our videos and started to crap on them. Like I know, man, that you've told, like I told you about it.
that one guy who got the video of us like talking about the Russians or something like that. He
The
just
Free
like
Russian
reacted the
Army.
whole time, going, "Oh my, oh." He
Yeah.
said that the whole time.
Or
It's
better,
like, dude, you're a pro-Russian shill.
or better yet, that one guy who said, when I sat there and showed bombing of Belgrade, I said the citizens of Belgrade are getting bombed by the Free Russian Army. It shows that they are getting close to the town. And then the guy said, and then by the way, when I do this voice, it's literally the voice that this guy talks in. He said, why would it not be Russian army? And I was like, because like, why would the Russians be bombing their own town? It's like, yes, they do that sometimes, but that would make no sense in this instance. It's like, oh, they're down here, quick, bomb the main city we're in. It's like, that makes no sense. Like, oh, that was a stupid
You
one.
also like how in his thumbnail and stuff, he put like 50 pictures of himself doing a different like shocked pose in it. You know, like he was acting like he had his hand over his face in one of them. He had his face like face down on the table. Then he had himself laying flat on the floor. It's like, dude, how many
Yeah.
pictures did you take of yourself and put it on the thumbnail, like acting like a loon? It's like, come on,
Man.
And it's what's crazy is the guy had a decent following of crazy nutcases that actually support Russia. And it's like, what the hell? It's like, how are Americans really jumping in here and thinking, yes, this guy right here who sounds like a communist, who's supporting Russia, is supporting American beliefs? It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, and also another thing. Well, that's too much detail on the guy because I'll have y'all know, while we don't pay a lot of attention to it, just like I'm saying to UConn, we do have what I would call. And it's kind of a term I say in a joking form because it's not really this, but I joke around with it. We almost have like a secret police that are on this channel that are always telling us everything that's going on that could pertain to the channel that may end up causing issues where people may start threatening us, stuff like that. So that way we can keep on top of it. So if there's anything ever being said about this channel anywhere, good or bad, we have seen it. Like we have to go around and see it to make sure that we keep eyes on things and make sure that things aren't getting out of control, because there is a crazy enough group of people out there that we always have to be kind of a little bit on alert that they might actually be trying to, come and get us at some point or something along those lines. So we ended up having to look at that channel and a whole bunch of others. And while we look at them a lot, we've started to realize now that there's really not a lot that none of them will do or they can do. And so we just ended up really stop paying attention to them. Except, like, while we stop paying attention to him and we don't care about him, there is one exception, which is Hot Dog Man, and it's really just because it is funny as hell. And I will keep doing it because it is funny as hell. And also, and this is a stupid thing, is that Hot Dog Man makes a hit piece on us, like the 90th one. And then we will retort to that by not directly stating the guy's name or anything, just making some, jokes that are directed at him that he would know are directed at him and his community would know, but beyond that, it doesn't really get directly into a pissing contest or anything like that. And then the guy will go silent for 2 weeks. We'll just keep up the jokes, and then the guy will make another hit piece on us, and then everyone of his people or people in the middle act like we're the ones who instigated that. It's like, no, it's like all this was instigated by the first hit piece a year and a half ago, and the guy never stopped making them, no matter how many times we tried to reach out and ask the guy would he stop. And I'm going to make this very clear. This will never end. Like we found this out because we've seen other people deal with this guy and seen how they end it, and they pretty much end it, even when they're larger YouTube channels, by pretty much becoming the guy, and excuse my language here, but pretty much becoming the guy's bitch. And I'm not ever doing that. Like, no. And Matthew, you know who I'm talking about. You like that one guy, top 10 Ukraine war YouTubers or something. He got cussed out. He went over there and became the guy's bitch. And now there is no heat being thrown his way.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not doing that. I'm not a weak spine person. I don't deal with crackhead losers. I don't if that guy wants to keep doing what he does, making hit pieces, he can go at it. We're gonna keep laughing at the guy, no matter if he makes hit pieces or not, and we'll laugh at him whether he stays in that apartment he can't afford or not either. But beyond that, that's the only guy we even mention anymore. But even then, I don't pay attention to the guy. I hardly even know he exists. But anyways, with that, I thank you so much for the support, Con. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Andy L. Excuse me, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Andy, for your support as well. And shout out to Texas. He says, a look at the profitability of bumper stickers. And that is a good one. Now, bumper stickers, that is something before that we have looked at. Honestly, though, as a standalone item, I'm not sure if bumper stickers would be something that would be a good standalone. It would be good as maybe something to throw in to a larger merch run like T-shirts or hoodies or something like that. And we actually thought about maybe doing bumper stickers the last time, but we ended up going with the LSA flag stickers. But we could throw it in maybe. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say bumper stickers are a pretty cool idea. We actually did opt out of them though. We were like, yeah, people might not want bumper stickers. They might want just a general sticker to come in the flag. And so we ended up actually getting rid of our bumper sticker design and just going with the LSA design. But we might revisit that and do that, because if a lot of y'all will want it, we could probably throw it in as an extra goodie. And also, y'all will never know what the extra goodie actually is. We'll always make sure it's a surprise. But there may be an extra goodie in the future where it is a bumper sticker. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Andy L. And thank you for brainstorming with us some ideas about merchandise ideas in the future, because it helps out this channel massively with supporting us and helping us to keep this thing running. And not only that, it also helps out Ukraine too, because 10% of the profits are donated to them. So it's always cool to be brainstorming ideas. And to be quite honest, I'm going to be entirely honest, the merch drops are actually going to end up probably going neck and neck these days with how well Sunday fundraisers do, with the amount of donations that we can give to United 24. So that's actually a pretty good way to support Ukraine as well. But with that, I hope that does address that well once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Badger Bro, who puts in a 10 and says, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, if you were president, how would you fix or incentivize fixing the issues in NATO to strengthen it and to bolster it to be ready for any country that dares to FAFO?
I would say that the best way that we can be prepared is to just have a strong standing armed force, which the United States already has, but we need to make sure that the European nations also have strong standing armies of their own relative to their sizes. So I would say that is the best way to work about this. Once again, denuclearizing at the same time, but also keeping large standing land armies across the entirety of our alliance. That would be the best way to deal with the evils of the world, is just being strong enough to deal with them if the problem ever arises. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
On my end, on this question right here, I would say, honestly, I would never get to the point where I kick anyone out of NATO, because that's not a good idea just for the overall alliance as a whole. So I would avoid doing that. But one thing I would do, because nations do need to meet that 2% suggestion, I would turn that into an actual requirement instead of just a suggestion. If it would even be possible to turn it into a requirement, I would do it. And also to incentivize the countries fixing the issues within NATO, which is basically being underfunded or also not prepared for war. I would maybe put them on some type of system where they can be penalized or in some way basically punished for not meeting the goals that NATO has set. Because like I've said before, it's not fair that other countries basically foot the bill for other countries that aren't spending properly. That's really not fair. And the 2% guideline is actually in percentage to, or in proportion to GDP. So it's based on the country's overall gross domestic product. It's not based on a raw amount of money. So it's totally fair. 2% to any country GDP-wise is going to be less if they have a smaller economy, or higher if they have a higher economic output. So there should be no reason why any country does not meet that 2%. And if they're below it, to me, that should be punished. But they shouldn't be kicked out of NATO. But Enforcer, would you like to weigh in on that?
I would have to say that's actually a fairly good idea. Largely what I said, but with more extra details. But I'd have to completely agree with the details, because that would be something I believe is imperative. And a lot of people, once again, are going to go, "Hey, wait a minute, you can't force people to do that." Yeah, we really can, at least right now. But why in the world should they be possibly jeopardizing the alliance by not doing their part? Once again, much like we were talking earlier in the stream about how the men of Ukraine should do their part in the war effort, being there if their country calls on them, NATO countries are a lot like people in that regard in this alliance. Every single one of them has to do their part. There can be no slackers. And so I would have to say, every country that is below that mark should be seriously encouraged and persuaded to be above that mark by the end of it, because I don't think it's great to see European countries that are lagging behind or slacking, and they are bringing the rest of the alliance, members like the United States, Poland, and others like Greece, who spends about 3.2% of their GDP on defense. They're dragging all of them down. They're well beyond meeting the quota, and then other countries like Germany and France are under it, and I don't think that's a good thing in my opinion. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Badger Bro yet again, who puts in a 10 and says, Enforcer, have you seen any improvement with the new commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Colonel Alexander Syrskyi? And is it too soon, or was General Valery Zaluzhny better?
As far as Syrskyi goes, to be quite honest, I see absolutely no difference in between Zaluzhny and Syrskyi. Syrskyi is trying to streamline the Ukrainian logistical services, which are actually classified on how they operate, where they're operating from, and how efficient they are. So we won't actually be able to see the differences that Syrskyi implements. The only way that we'll really be able to see them is once U.S. support arrives, how quickly is it spread around the front lines, and how effective is it being used. That's when we'll really see if he's effective or not. So maybe a little too early to call, but to be quite honest, on visible signs of improvement or degradation, there's really no change in between Zaluzhny or Syrskyi, in my opinion. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for a good question, Badger Bro. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Octavian Timirasun, who puts in a 10 and says, there is a Ukrainian kid in my gym who's 17 years old and wants to go fight for Ukraine, and I won't ever judge a man for not wanting to die, but even this kid feels the need to stand with his brothers.
And see, like, that's like the thing to me, you see, and that's the thing that kind of annoys me a little bit, to be quite honest, is that there are folks like this 17-year-old boy, Octavian, who would be more than willing to fight and of course have the risk of dying, which is, the most severe thing that can happen. It's the finality of death. There's nothing else that's more severe than death for a person. But this 17-year-old kid would be willing to face it down, but 30 and 40-year-olds from Ukraine wouldn't. It's like that kid's got a lot more to live for. I mean, he's in the prime of his time. He could go and get married, have children, have a family, become a successful businessman and adventurer. Who knows? This kid could do anything. He's got his entire life ahead of him. But he would be willing to risk it all and die because he cares for his country that he's from, and he's a part of the Ukrainian team, pretty much. And when you think of it like that, that a 17-year-old boy, he'll soon be a man, but a 17-year-old boy would be willing to risk his own life to defend Ukraine. Why in the world should we be allowing 30 and 40-year-olds the chance to run away and be cowards? That's my thing. I can get people being scared, but I cannot get cowardice. Because everyone is scared. It's natural to be scared. Everyone's going to be afraid. No one wants to die, and that will always be a certainty. So everyone's always going to be afraid in a war. But you can't let your fear overcome you and run away. That is truly cowardice. Because if you were to let's say this would be a good example. Let's say that you were a man and you were having a time out with your girlfriend or something like that. A night out or something like that. And someone came along and assaulted your girlfriend. Would you get scared and run away, or would you stand up for your girlfriend and fight for him? I mean, you owe nothing to your girlfriend in reality. I mean, that's just another person. Your relationship can end with them in a single second. But it seems like the right thing to do, whether you'd be scared of the guy, like he's built like a brick house or whatever, the right thing to do would be to stand up and defend your girlfriend from someone who just assaulted them. That's how I would view it. I mean, yeah, you might get beat. That's a possibility, but still it would seem cowardly to just run away or just let it slide, not do anything about it. And so that's my thing. If you take that kind of a mindset on joining the armed forces in the defense of your nation, and you apply that kind of mindset to anything else where you don't owe anyone an obligation, you just run away, it always equates to being cowardice every single time. And so that would be my opinion on it, Octavian. But I completely see what you're saying. But if he can have the courage, anyone can have the courage. And if he has a reason to fight, everyone's got a reason to fight, because he's hardly begun to live. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again, Octavian Timirasun, for the incredible support, and also throwing in a really interesting comment as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Waiting for My Clone, who puts in a 10 and says inflection point, the birth of the internet. He says, I was there, and I hope this will facilitate free speech in channels like yours. Prove it did that. And thank you for that. And next one, AI coming soon to a place near you.
And thank you so much, Waiting for My Clone, for the 10 euro super chat, and the first super chat of its kind. And the birth of the internet was a really interesting inflection point in history, because it really has changed the way the world works entirely over just a few years. And I would say that, let's see, free speech, I would have to say, as far as Waiting for My Clone, I'll actually have to give a strike against such a kind compliment. Free speech is not necessarily free on this channel. I will say that, because we do have some limitations, because it is a pro-Western channel. We don't allow voices of the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, or the North Koreans in the chat. They actually get banned if anyone comes in here in support of those countries. So I'd actually have to say we're not entirely free speech on this channel, because it has a kind of like a pointed direction and purpose to it. So we don't want people in here just espousing propaganda and brawlhalla happening in the live chat. So we actually end up suppressing some things that people say, but really just the bots, and also the pro-Russian shills and the pro-commie shills and all that. But still, thank you for the kind words and saying that this channel does it well. I mean, we try and keep it civil in here, and we try and keep people on largely the same page, but if people would disagree beyond that, as long as it's polite, that's all fine by me. But thank you for enjoying the channel. And also, AI right now is in its infancy. I don't think it's going to be doing a lot at the moment, but I would say that in the future, in the next few years, AI is certainly going to start taking off and have practicable industrial implementations, and probably commercial ones as well. But right now, it's still kind of in its infancy, and while it's starting to be implemented in some fields, it's not really out there completely yet. It's kind of like how the internet was in its infancy. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to AMX10 Speeded Bang Bang, who puts in two $10 donations. And the first one said, test. Happy Anzac Day to everyone. And all is well, because nowadays Turkey is on Team Democracy.
Turkey is on Team Democracy, and it was really cool how that happened, because, you know, the Ataturk fought the Turkish War of Independence, expelled all of the occupational forces, and then founded the Republic of Turkey, and then it immediately became a friend with the West instead of becoming an enemy, which is really wild when you think about it, because he literally just got done fighting, really, most of the countries in the West during the Turkish during the Turkish War of Independence. But I would have to say, it is really cool. And also, happy Anzac Day to you, AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, because Ari Sweeney just brought that up. And all of our Australians and New Zealanders are really enjoying the Day of the Anzacs. Really cool holiday when you really think about the origins of it. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Dion, who puts in a 6 and says, so far, you guys bring the best breaking news and journalism from Ukraine and beyond, and keep it sober and neutral, and LSA all the way.
And LSA all the way, baby! And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for the kind words, Dion. And we try our best. I hope we were able to meet that that kind of threshold tonight, where we were a good reporting channel, and we try and keep it as sober and pro-Western as possible. Neutral, mostly, but pro-Western still. But still, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so with that, thank you so much once again, Dion. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Shia Rainey, who puts in a 5 and says, do you think we'll see an upcoming successful offensive front, Ukraine, with this new aid package?
I think we'll see that the Ukrainians, I actually believe that the Ukrainians will most likely try and not conduct an offensive this year. They're most likely just going to try and wait out the Russians' collapse, which we believe will be coming towards the end of this year, probably towards the very later end of this year. And so I have a feeling they're probably going to stock up, defend their skies, attack the Russians deep inside of their own territory, and hope that that will eventually lead to the collapse of the Russian Federation, or such heavy economic pressures that the Russians have to end the war and withdraw. I think that's most likely what will happen. I don't think they have any plans of conducting a major summer offensive, but if they do, I'm not really sure where they even conduct one at the moment, but we'll see. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to CK Bold, who puts in a 5 and says, take a live chat question. And we shall. And thank you very much, CK Bold, for throwing in the regular. And this one goes to, let's see here. This one goes to Leonce Pierre, who says, hello, enforcers. And any news about the new Ukrainian submarine?
The new Ukrainian submarine, we have heard about the Ukrainians possibly getting a submarine, but I don't have a lot of updates or details on it because it hasn't been delivered to the Ukrainians, and I think it's still being constructed at the moment, or it's currently being held by the country that's going to give it. And I think that country is actually the Germans. I think the Germans are giving an electro-diesel submarine to Ukraine. I forgot the name of it. But if I thought really hard, I could probably think the name of this thing. This is, I think it's a similar class to the ARA San Juan. And let me check that. Let's see here. So I think if I remember correctly, oh dang, come on. One second. Let's see, submarines built since World War II. One of the fastest diesel submarines in the world. So if I remember correctly, it's something like a TR-1700 class submarine pictured here. I think that's the kind of submarine that Ukraine is going to be getting, if I remember correctly, but I don't really have a lot of news on the submarine that Ukraine will be getting. So I'll try and look into it a little bit more. And also, hey, look, Matthew, it's the ARA Santa Cruz. Isn't that cool? You know, this thing actually had a sister submarine, Matthew, called the San Juan. You know what happened to it?
Wow.
It went below crutch depth, it imploded like a Coke can, and everyone on board died instantly.
Oh, damn, that's dark.
Yeah, pretty dark. But, you know, I guess the pressure got to him. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Blue Flam 777 LSA, who puts in a $10 donation and says, on you, Joke Orc Bot walks into a brand, dies. Slav Ukraine, LSA question to chat.
Hey! Oh, sorry! and really good joke. I got it, man. There was a small typo. It said barn, but it was supposed to be walks into a bar and died.
I see.
But beyond that, thank you so much, Blue Flame 777, for always throwing in a dad joke, being an absolute channel legend, and we will make sure to grab a question from the live chat. And so, with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And this question goes to Old Buzzard, who says, do we have a good feel on how many or percentage of lost refineries are in Russia?
We know that around 17% of them have been knocked out, and this is leading the Russians to have about a 700 to 800,000 barrel of oil deficit per day, meaning that they're eating into strategic reserves as each day passes. And so with that, I hope that does answer that live chat incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one here is going to go to Shia Rainey, who puts in a 5 once again. I believe it does, once again, actually. And she said, hi, from a Kiwi living in Australia, and New Zealand have supported the U.S. in every major war since World War II. And yet we aren't picking up the tab when it comes to Ukraine.
Hey, it's okay. A lot of the East Asian countries will never be able to do that because the cost of shipping things to Ukraine is prohibitively expensive from these countries. So they usually get turned away because of that. It's a lot cheaper for European and North American countries to do instead. So I don't really consider that too much of a big deal with New Zealand because, you know, it's the other side of the world. It literally cannot be their problem for the most part, although they are supportive of Ukraine, and I appreciate that. But still, I got to thank you for the support. I got to thank you for being here with us on Anzac Day. I have to bring that up, and thank you so much once again for the kind words and supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Nick LSA, who puts in a 5 and says, hello, Andrew and Matt, and hello, Nick. He says,
hello.
what are the demographics of the LSA, and long live the LSA?
And long live the Lee Spring Army, and the demographics. Incredibly interesting question. We get a question like this every so often, and let me go grab the demographics and share this with y'all. So, we're going to go look at the past 28 days alone. So, the traffic source. Most of y'all are watching from the browse feature. Around 70% of y'all who watched the channel over the past 28 days found it from the browse feature. As far as geography is concerned, the majority of our viewers are American, with 49.4% of all viewers over the past 28 days being from the United States. That is followed by Canada at 9.7%, the United Kingdom with 8.5%, Australia with 4.3%, and the Philippines with 2%. Whack. Man, Germany fell off. Like, Germany fell out of the top 5. They're now down to number 7. We are very popular in the Philippines these days. Moving on from that, as far as the top 5 cities goes, most of y'all, 1.2%, come from the city of New York, New York. The next largest group is from London, England, or London in the United Kingdom. The third largest group is from Sydney, Australia. The next one is Los Angeles, on the west coast of the United States. And then there is a large amount of viewership from Toronto in Canada. Very interesting indeed. As far as viewer ages go, most of y'all would fall in between the ages of 65, well, actually from 55 to 65 and up. Y'all make up, just the 2 groups alone right there, 55 to 64 and 65 plus, y'all make up 50% of this channel's viewership. 20.5% of y'all are in between the ages of 45 to 54, 17.8% of y'all are in between the ages of 35 and 44, 11.2% of y'all are in between the ages of 25 and 34, and then only 3.3% of y'all are within Matthew and my age bracket at 18 to 24. Not only that, but interestingly enough, 10.3% of our viewers are women. That's actually a 1% increase from last month. 89.2% of y'all are men. As far as, let's see here, let me see, the subscription status goes, most people who watch this channel, 73% of them are unsubscribed. Only 27.3% of them are subscribed. But that's really the large breakdown of our viewers' analytics for the most part. Who's from where and who's doing what. And so I hope that shares that with you. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. But that's what the Elite Spring Army is. The breakdown of where they are, how old they are, and where they come from on the internet. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And also, Matthew, did we get to Philip Banks' question?
Philip Banks. Let's see here. You mean a super chat?
Yes, yes.
It's coming up down the list.
Oh, good, good, good. I was just making sure because it showed up in yellow. I was like, we didn't get to that one yet. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Point of Guinness. He puts in a 5 and says, will the continued sabotage and drone attacks in Russia end the war summer next year?
I believe the war is most likely going to end towards the latter part of the end of this year, but it may actually end in the summer of next year if the Russians end up finding a way to extend their life in the war a little bit. It probably may end in the in the midsummer of next year, possibly. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Joe Rockweller, who puts in a 5 and says, Joe from Singapore, and I have been watching your reports and wanted to help. This is my first donation, and keep up the good reporting.
And thank you so much for the support and being all the way from Singapore, one of the few city-states in the world. Really cool place. And I gotta thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And not only that, thank you for finding it worthwhile to support, especially all the way from Singapore. It's very rare that we get viewers from the East Asian part of the world, Singapore, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Philippines. Well, actually, the Philippines is 2% now, so it's not that rare. But for the most part, it is fairly rare, especially to hear of a viewer from Singapore. And so thank you so much once again for support. Thank you for wanting to help this channel to keep on running. And also, these docks out here, Matthew, I mean, they looked like from space that they were going underwater. I don't know if you're seeing that, but I was seeing that.
Yeah, it looks like they're flooded.
Man, I'm telling you what, man, they was flooding well. And look at this giant island just made for oil silos. That is wild right there. Impressive even. Crazy even. But anyways.
That's a lot of oil.
Look at all that oil. The Americans would feel at home. But it's like, look at all that water. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Butchie777, who puts in a 10 and says, Little Hood Review, the Cooperative Society, Beamish Museum, ORG, High Street. You should try and visit next time you're in the UK. And got my flag yesterday. Hey,
Hey, hey, I love to hear it. And also, hopefully, I'm getting this right. It's Beamish Museum in Beamish, Stanley, UK. Beamish Museum.
Beamish.
I be dipped. If you let's see. It says, okay, so comma 0RG, comma high T. So let's type this in directly. The Cooperative Society. Okay. Hang on, hold up. Is this that place? I be dipped. I think it is that place. Hang on. I think
I'll be dipped.
Call me a banana split. This is the Beamish place. Oh, wait a minute. I know what this is. This has been on a couple of British TV shows. I've seen them. It's like, life in Victorian England was an absolute hell. Let us show you why. And then they actually like show a historically accurate depiction of why life would have been hell back then. But it is a really cool place. Look at this. This Butchie 777. I'm gonna be quite honest. Hood reviews just aren't what they used to be. We got to make hood reviews great again. They got to actually be like legit hood reviews. But I still like this. This is pretty cool. This is really neat, actually. This is like a historic representation of what Britain would have looked like in the late Victorian era, I believe, if I'm correct. So that is incredibly cool. And I gotta say, thank you for showing us this place. And also, let me see if I can find a better look at this. So there's that street, but there's something else. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Hang on. Let me go down here. Let's see here. It's just really cool. I mean, like I'm trying to find some things that I may have remembered from like some reality TV shows in Britain where they're like, we took 5 normal people and we put them in hell, and it's like they'll be like, here's the job of a baker: go down in the basement and get like lots of flour in your lungs and permanent health damage, so you can tell people in the present day how cushy they have. And I'm like, honestly, that's kind of fair. I'm like, that's honestly a pretty good thing. But beyond that, thank you, Butchie 777, for showing this thing. It's incredibly cool, and I will be making sure, try and look at this a little bit more. But here's the parking here, and I swear, I swore this was like one of those Heritage Railway things, but apparently it isn't, although it looks so much like one. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to a channel legend, Duncan VR, who puts the $6 donation there. And he has the animal noises in light mode tonight. He says, "Bamuba, baba, woo quack, and can we see the marmot?"
Man, you turned into a machine gun.
Lost it.
Man, you went. But anyways, let's go get the marmot. Man, I gotta tell you, I don't know what it is. I've been sapped of energy the entire show. Like it's been a tough night. Like, not to complain. But anyways, hey, it's the marmot. Oh,
hello there. Would you care for a plum or some rock? We don't sell hot dogs. I'm sorry. Go see the fly for that.
Would you care for a Leaf Spring Army mug? Aw, man, I wish I had a community big enough to run merch, but instead I'll shit on you for making some. Get lost!
Your mouth, governor.
Oi! Shouldn't you be getting Bosley for that giant hole in your head?
Find a barber now, because he's gouging you.
Yeah, you said, take a little off the top. You took a little too much, Governor. Too much. But beyond that, we love the marmot. The marmot is incredible. We absolutely adore the marmot. Love the marmot. And I thank you so much, Duncan VR, for wanting to see it again. But beyond that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Agent B7, who puts in a 5 and says, you know it's fair journalism when 2 people running the channel disagree on a key issue, and it's okay. Cheers to you guys. And isn't that good, Agent B7? And, you know, it's actually quite common for me and the Enforcer to disagree because he has a history perspective on things, and I have more of a realistic political science, modern day perspective on things.
What the hell are you talking about, realistic?
Well, in political science, there's realism. There's different approaches to foreign politics like this. And I think on my end, I might be more on the realist side of things. I don't mean like your opinions are not realistic. It's just like it's a format of viewing things. So you're taking it the wrong way. But
man, you literally said realistic, though. You're like, I have a more realistic mindset. I was like, what the hell do you mean realistic?
Well, see, we're disagreeing right now. I think it's more realistic. But honestly, though, it is a good thing that we can disagree on these things. And the Enforcer, like I said, has the history perspective, and I have the political science perspective on it. So it's a little bit of a different viewpoint, and it's actually something that we disagree on quite a bit on different things. But yet at the same time, we don't end up chopping each other up over it, or whatever the British say. I don't think that's the proper term. What do they say? What's the term? It's not chopping each other up. It's something else.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't even think of it either, to be quite honest.
It's getting stitches or something like that. Hell, I don't know. But the British people in the chat let us know. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I thank you so much for enjoying that we had a disagreement. Some people take that as we're like throwing heat on the stream at each other. We're not actually. It's honestly we have like discussions on air. We can have disagreements, and then we just completely forget about them by the end of the stream. And so as far as that goes, I would have to say it is pretty independent as far as that goes. Luckily, we're not louder with Crowder because if y'all haven't been hearing lately, of course that's not news. That's I don't know what the hell that is, but it's slop to me. Like every political pundit channel is. But apparently, there's been some interesting things going on over there, Matthew. Some interesting things that were coming about working there, and that is. Have you heard about it, Matthew?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh,
I honestly don't keep up with the political pundits very much. In my opinion, it's just a bunch of junk. Like
Oh,
pretty
it
much
is.
all the political pundits on all sides is just a bunch of junk.
It is, but like today, before the show ran, I had a little bit of time to watch like a mini documentary that someone had made about what's happening behind the scenes on that channel, that program. And apparently there has been allegations, and I'm saying this as clinical as I can. There have been allegations, and I believe there's an ongoing lawsuit right now about potential sexual misconduct in the workplace, apparently a little bit severe, ongoing with it was a very, very strict contract, an employment contract that was made for people that work there. I mean, it was wildly strict. It was incredibly strict. And I was like, wow, like I'll be quite honest with y'all. I stay out of politics as best I can. But when there's high drama to be had, I'll always be like, man, what's going on over there? And it is going bad. I mean, oh my goodness. I was like, man, I'm lucky that we're not those people. Because apparently if you disagree with him, you just got cussed out behind the scenes. Like I was like, wait, well, that's new. Like, just on like topical things like that would be talked about on the show. I was like, huh. That's interesting. But anyways, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And luckily, we can agree to disagree. I would have to say that my mindset is the right mindset and perfectly realistic. But with that, thank you so much once again. I'm just playing around. I'm just playing. I'm just kidding with you. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Wellness LSA Latvia, who puts in a 10 and says, hello, LSA, and thank you, brothers, for great job. And thank you, Wellness. He said, I just woke up and on my way to job. And as usual, always listening to you guys, and all time, all days. And keep it up. Question from the chat.
Hey, and thank you so much, Wellness LSA, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say that it is great to hear that you just got up and you're on your way to work. I hope you have a fun time trimming the hooves today. I hope it's a great day for you and you get a good deal of business. And not only that, the hooves are trimmed well. And I also have to say, thank you so much for enjoying listening to the channel. And also, we will make sure to keep it up. And your support will help it to be possible. And we will make sure to send the question to the chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And the question from the chat goes to GHJKLZ, who says, with the dam on the Dnipro gone, how bad will the Dnipro flood and how bad will it be?
It will be probably as bad as the Novikakhovka dam flood, but if the one blew up at Dnipropetrovsk dam in Zaporizhia, it would actually travel a lot further. It might actually end up flooding the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which could be a serious result and serious concern. It could lead to a meltdown if things went in the worst case scenario down there. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we got one from Barry Woodward, who puts in a 5. Or actually, hold on, Barry Woodward. We actually had that 20 coming from New Zealand from Steve, who said that those that defend their country should be given tax benefits for life and homes in rebuilt cities, and that they did what was asked for the country and should be put right. And medical priority too, and they earned it.
And I thank you for the support, Steve T. And I would have to say that I would largely agree with that. It would be nice to see that people who I would have to say that would be a great thing to do. I was thinking there might be a bit of an issue there as far as actually implementing that, but I don't think there really would be, especially in a major war like this. Because isn't that what we did at the end of World War II with the GI Bill and other things that we gave to all of those service members who served in World War II? I mean, we gave them huge amounts of benefits at the end of the war. I mean, it was like payday for those folks, and it really was. But beyond that, I would completely agree. Those folks did earn it if they fought in a war like that, and they should get all of those benefits and maybe even a little bit extra add-on on top. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you, Steve T, for being a longtime viewer and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we now have a $20 super chat from Jenna, last name Tolls, who says, does the Marmot wield a top hat yet?
Sadly not. I hate to say that, Jenna, last name Tolls. It sadly does not wield a top hat yet, but I am going to translate over one of Nutter's HD's special marmots that he made, because he made a pretty good amount of them. And we will make sure to put it up on air and keep that thing around, because it's funny with a top hat. I got to say, it is quite hilarious even. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one here goes to World War II epic battles. He says, I'm tired of people saying that Russia is invincible. He says, once I'm done with my Utah Beach series, I'll make a video about strategy against Russia. And I'll tell you what, that's a hell of a shift, like going from Utah Beach. I didn't even know they had beaches in Utah, but and then going to strategy against Russia. That is a very diverse channel you've got there. And also thank you for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you for the support. And, best of luck. I will be looking around trying to see it when it comes up. And I gotta thank you for the support and sharing that you'll be trying to make a video on that in the future. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one is going to go to Barry Woodward, who puts in that 5, and says, Putin orders the Kerch Bridge painted as sea waves to confuse satellite image surveillance.
And you know something? That is quite interesting. 1 second. Reread that again, Matthew. I heard sea waves.
They said Putin orders Kerch Bridge painted as sea waves to confuse satellite image surveillances.
For some reason, I swore that they said the Mustache Man, and I was like, what? And I was like, wait, what? He did it? And I was like, no way. But still, thank you so much for the support, helping this channel keep on running. And I'd have to say, Mustache Man may have been responsible. He may have indeed been responsible entirely. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Craig Savares, who puts in a 5 and does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Craig, for that support, and we appreciate it very much.
Craig did leave a comment.
Whoa, he did?
Yes. He said, with the massive use of drones now, do you think shotguns can be more relevant in Ukraine? And I'd have to say, Craig, yes. We've actually seen that a lot of units are starting to introduce shotguns as pretty much issued weapons, issued small arms. And I'd have to say they certainly do have a place on the battlefield nowadays, because shotguns are one of the most effective and cheap, well, one of the cheapest and most effective to its price anti-drone weapons there currently is out there. So I would have to say shotguns are certainly becoming a lot more relevant in modern warfare for that reason. And so with that, thank you for the support, Craig. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to MX Blicky, who puts in the 5 and says, long live LSA and saying hello from Texas. And just subscribe before y'all hit 200K, and y'all truly inspire me to start my own channel to cover the world news. And good luck to you, MX Blicky. It is a long road from 1 subscriber to 200,000. A very long road indeed, but rewarding road, even at that. And thank you very much for the support, and also hello to Texas. And Enforcer, what say you?
And hello to Texas. And really cool to hear that you started your own channel. Best of luck to your channel. I hope it does well and it prospers. But it is quite a difficult road. It's not really difficult. It's just a long road, because to get to 210,000 subscribers nearly, because that's what we're really close to, it took a long time. It took over 2 years, really 100,000 subscribers per year. I think here soon we'll probably end up growing even faster than that, because we'll start to really get into some very interesting stuff here soon. But still, I gotta thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep running, because folks like you make this thing possible. And if it wasn't for folks like you who had just joined recently, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. I mean, you would have joined very recently. It would have been like within the past 2 weeks because we hit 200,000 subscribers not that long ago. But still, thank you greatly once again. I hope that addresses that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Galatians, who puts in a 5 and says, thank you for all you do, and please check out Anzac Day for the Kiwis and Australians in the chat, and lest we forget, 07 to all the vets.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And today is Anzac Day. It's kind of like Remembrance Day in a form for Anzac, which is the Australians and New Zealand's combined. And it commemorates all of the Australians and New Zealanders who died in all wars, conflicts, and peacekeeping operations. Although originally Anzac Day was specifically for the Anzac forces of World War I, which is where the holiday came from. And also, like Steve said, Enforcer just I'm so sorry. I thought no one heard that. But I'm exhausted right now. But we're keeping it going because we're strong. But beyond that, it is actually named after the Anzac forces of World War I. But beyond that, it is y'all's equivalent of Veterans Day in America or Remembrance Sunday in the United Kingdom. So really, it's a really important holiday, especially for all of y'all. And you can actually see an Anzac Memorial right there, the State War Memorial, at Kings Park in Western Australia. So this will probably be around Perth or something similar. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again for allowing us a moment to point out what Anzac Day is.
Indeed. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Dr. Death, who says, lest we forget, thanks to all current and past serving Australian and New Zealand servicemen, Slava Ukraine, and thank you too for the work.
And thank you so much for enjoying the work, and happy Anzac Day once again to everyone from Australia and New Zealand. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. But thank you so much once again, Dr. Death, for the support, helping this channel to keep on running, and also commemorating Anzac Day as well, lest we forget. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Susan Shellnut, who puts in a 5. And Susan did not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Susan, for that support and helping to keep us running and keeping the work alive. And we also have a 5 from Maddie Matt, who says, would helicopters with mounted guns be a cost-effective option against drones?
Helicopters with mounted guns would possibly be a cost-effective option, but if the gun misses and the drone actually impacts the helicopter, you could actually end up losing millions of dollars. Not only that, for it to provide frontline anti-drone protection, it would most likely be a very easy target for ground air defense. So might not be that cost-effective, may actually end up being very costly to do something like that. But still an interesting idea, Maddie Matt, and I wouldn't rule it out completely. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Philip Bank, who puts in a 5, and it says, take a live chat question on me as well. And keep it up, guys, from Finland/Denmark.
Hey, and thank you so much for support from Finland/Denmark, and we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. And so thank you so much once again for support, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, Matthew, what is the live chat?
And this live chat question goes to Blue123, who says, yes, but are the pilots trained, though, for the F-16? I heard that the pilots are having a steep learning curve.
They do have a steep learning curve, but they finally overcome it past training, and they're now going to be sending the F-16s on their way forward. So they are trained up to a NATO standard, finally. It took a while, but finally. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Martin Bissig, who puts in a 5 and says, Ukraine, stand your ground.
And Ukraine, stand your ground. Stand your ground. Stay where you are. I think it's a good thing that they do. Of course, because we cover them on this channel and we support them too. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ryan, who puts in a 2. And Ryan says, he said, and this is in Ryan's word, by the way, he said, can we flood the chat with LSA super chats?
Oh, no.
Oh.
No. Super chats are entirely if people want to support the channel. No one has to support it if they don't want to. And I never want to tell people, hey, it feels so bad to even think about it. And it feels even worse that I would try and say something like this. Because while that's a very nice thing, what I'm pretty much telling everyone is, hey, if you like me, give me money. And I never want anyone to feel like they have to pay us to be able to say that they like the channel or enjoy the channel, because no one owes this. Like while I say that everyone owes their nation a great deal and everyone owes, really everyone a great deal, no one owes this channel anything. Not a dime, not a like, not a view. Y'all can stop watching if y'all want any day. Y'all don't have to support if you don't want to. Everything about that is totally fine. We're just happy to have y'all here, and I never want anyone to feel like they have to support the channel. So while that is a very nice thought, and I will say that, we never would actually call for a wave of super chats, because I would feel terrible doing something like that. But with that, thank you so much once again, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was actually our last super chat question to address. So, no cap. So with that, we're moving on to our live chat questions, and we have our Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight, it was Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumpelstiltskin, David Millsaps, and Toxic Bananas. And David Millsap said the Morse code for tonight from the LSA Signal Corps: Ukraine is slowly chipping away at the Russian forces along the river. Long live the LSA, and great job, guys.
And that's the sound of money, and y'all hit that dead on the nail. That was a jackpot. Y'all got the Morse code message correct. It is that the Ukrainians are chipping away at those lines, and hopefully we'll see that they actually make some smaller advances here in the near future around that area. And so with that, thank y'all for deciphering that Morse code message. Thank you for helping this channel to continuously know what the Morse code messages are. 791 days in, we're only 9 days away from day 800, which is crazy. And so with that, also, someone asked a very weird question in the live chat. I was like, that's not true at all. But with that, we're now going to be moving on into our third to last question of the night, because we actually run mostly out of time due to the large amount of super chats. And I got to thank everyone so much once again for supporting the channel that decided to tonight and helping this thing to keep on running. But due to the sheer volume of people who threw in super chats, we have a very small amount of time to address live chats with. So we're going to get 3, and we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Brian Bradshaw, who says, could the F-16 already be active in limited packages and numbers, and long-range booms are bigger, and what's your opinion?
I would say the F-16 is not operational in Ukraine, because we would most likely have video footage of that at some point, and we do not. And so we would largely have to say we do not believe the F-16s are operational in the theater at the moment. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to American Restoration, who says, what do you think Russia will do when they determine they can't take the territory using traditional munitions?
They will probably, well, they really won't have an option, because it doesn't fall within their nuclear doctrine. Ukraine is not a threat to Russian, the existence of the Russian state. They're not invading Russia and trying to take them over. So there's really no way they can use nuclear weapons. So if conventional arms don't work, they really just have to end up piecing out, because the next level of escalation would be untenable, at least from what I understand. Not to say it's impossible. I mean, they could just launch a nuke if they wanted to, but even according to their own doctrine, that would be far out of the norm to do something like that. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Sean, who says, apparently Ukraine had been holding back on artillery. And Enforcer Matt, do you think they released their stockpile?
They were holding back on artillery because they didn't know how long they had to stretch their supplies to make them last. So they ended up holding a lot of it in reserve, so that way they could keep up a fire rate of around 2,000 rounds per day across the entirety of the front lines. But now that they know a lot more shells are coming in, they're starting to burn through their current existing stocks, because they already know that those are going to be replenished really soon due to the floodgates opening again for support. So I would have to say that's a good thing. It's a great thing. And it's certainly because of the U.S. support. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank everyone so much once again for watching this stream. It's been absolutely incredible. Tonight at the peak, there was a whopping 8.9 thousand people here. Almost 9,000 people were on this stream live, and 58,000 people have watched this stream before it's ended. We are always so honored. I cannot tell y'all enough how honored we are to have 58,000 people here with us tonight, watching this news and enjoying it, and nearly 9,000 people here live. It blows us away every single day that so many of y'all choose this to be your primary source of news on the war in Ukraine, and I just can't thank y'all enough for that. We are entirely honored to have that position. We don't even know why we have it, but we will always cherish having each and every one of y'all here with us every night as we continue, like machines nearly, to cover the news of the war every single day. On the live streams, at least. In the short war videos, that's a whole other question, but on the live streams, we certainly are covering it every single day. And so with that, I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and get yourself a Lee Spring Army mug at officialenforcerstore.com, link in the description below. But with that, good night.
All right, and good night, folks, and thank you all for another great stream, of course, and we'll see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern, and also, I'll see you midday on the Short War Summary if there's enough news to cover. And with that, Slava Ukraine, Heroem Slava, and go check out that mug. I'm telling you what, that mug is busting over there at officialenforcerstore.com. And if you, and we're not going to do the whole shtick anyway, but anyways, we'll see you all tomorrow, and good night.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.